Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts off with a starry sky as a man asks for one more cup. We see two men drinking. One of the men, named Hui Ryongja, says that he's waited for decades, but to think he'd only have one cup, calling the other man a cold-hearted person. He pours him another one. He says, come to think of it, when they first met, they were both young. He stares at the man, wondering where the years went. Ryongja pours a drink, saying that it's been over 40 years since he first met the man. As we see a younger version of him entering, asking Ryongja to use the Great Regression technique and send him to the past. Ryongja was surprised. We learn that the technique is one of the great achievements of the Gui family. It has been researched and passed down for centuries now, and that it was close to impossible to use. He could have completed it, but he had no choice but to give up, as the 5 materials needed to complete the technique were actually impossible to gather. Ryongja smiles, saying that he'll use the technique if the man brings him the materials needed. He says the first is called the Thunder Bell, a sacred artifact of the Heavenly Wind cults. The second is the Divine Incense Brazier, a sacred artifact of the Divine Dragon family. The third is the core essence of the 10,000-year carp. The fourth is the secret demonic soul of the demonic cults. Ryongja says that he was able to get the money he needed, but other than that, he could not get anything else. Yet the man in front of him was able to get them all over several decades. To obtain the last material, the secret demonic soul, he disappeared for a long time and thought that he died in some random hole. He looks down at his cup, reminiscing, saying that it's hard to believe, asking how on earth he got all the materials. The one-armed man takes a drink, saying that he thought that this so-called great technique ought to be cursed due to the materials, and he also considered the possibility of killing Ryongja. Ryongja stares at him, says that he was really young when he first met him, but now he has become an old man with white hair, and that the air around him has changed as well, and he wonders if it was inevitable for him to change so much as he had to obtain all the materials needed. Ryongja says he finally gets the chance to ask him, and wonders why he's going back to the past. The man slams his cup on the table, and in a cold tone, saying it's for revenge. Ryongja is surprised, asking if it was impossible for him to take revenge even with his current skills. The man says yes, and Ryongja asks who he hates so much. Ryongja glares at him, and tells him that his name is Hua Mogi. Ryongja is shocked, as he recognizes the name. He kindly explains that all the leaders of the 3 strongest groups that supported Muram had died in his hands. The Alliance leader was killed, the Unorthodox Alliance leader as well, and the Heavenly Demon. He is the strongest person across all history, Hua Mogi. As we see him standing atop a mountain of corpses, Ryongja asks if he really thinks that even if he went to the past, he'd be able to defeat him. The man says he must, as he has to kill him no matter what. We learn that the Heavenly Demon who died by his hands was his father. Ryongja is surprised, and the man says he's not seeking revenge because he killed his father, and it's not because he killed his sly cunt of a brother either. It's not a big deal for people who have given their lives to demons to be killed. Ryongja asks why then. The man says on that day, he killed the servants, cooks, and even children who did not know martial arts. He even killed all of the cats and dogs. Ryongja says that's not something Mogi would do, and he can't believe it. The man says he does not care if he believes him or not. In this age, he won't be able to kill him, so he has to go back to the past. And he'll ask him one question before he does kill him. And that'll be why someone so strong had to kill children. Ryongja stares at him, saying that if the technique really works and he gets sent to the past, maybe he can do a favor for him. The man asks what it is. And Ryongja stares at him with a very serious expression, and says if he goes to the past, please come and find him. The man asks why, and then lightning strikes to show the severity of this request. As Ryongja says, he needs him to stop him from getting married. The thunder rumbles in the back, and the man makes a serious face as he understands how important this is, and then he starts laughing at Ryongja. Ryongja tells him that he's not kidding, and pleads with him to stop him. Ryongja tells the man to tell him to be alone for the rest of his life. The man smiles, saying that he promises him that. Ryongja tells him to follow him as they'll go to where he'll use the technique. We see the man stand up, and he wobbles as he is having trouble standing. Ryongja asks if he's okay, and the man says that he can still hang in there. He may have lost an arm and an eye, but it was a cheap price to pay in order to obtain the secret demonic soul. We see all the items gathered together, and Ryongja picks up a box, which obtains the demonic soul. It releases a blue aura around the room. Ryongja quickly starts chanting with his hands together, as all of the artifacts begin to resonate with one another. Then there is a loud vibrating sound. It stops, as the area around them distorts and a portal opens. Ryongja is surprised and screams that he actually did it. He turns to the man and asks if he's seeing this. As he sees the man is in horrible condition, and that he can't move due to his injuries. Ryongja looks at him and then looks back at the portal and realizes that this is his chance. He apologizes to the man, saying that he's sorry, and he'll look for him and warn him about the disaster, and that his family's greatest wish is to return to the past, as is his. As he gets closer, he realizes he can no longer move his body, and that his pressure points have been hit on his back. The man calls out to Ryongja, asking him how he could do this. Ryongja starts to feel fear, and the man continues, saying of all people, how could he do this, and grabs him by the throat. Ryongja begins to cough, and starts crying, saying that he lost his rationality, and he is very sorry. He says that he knows how hard it was for him to obtain the materials, and he should not have done this. The man's eyes are filled with mercy as he releases Ryongja. He says that he's a selfish person, too, and he cares for nobody but himself, and that was how he was able to gather them all. He grits his teeth, saying if Ryongja was anybody else, he would have killed them immediately, but he understands his wishes after all. He extends his hand once more, but this time to pat him on the shoulder, and thanks him for waiting his whole life. Ryongja starts to cry, and the man smiles warmly at him. Ryongja realizes how much his friend cares for him, and apologizes again. Then everything begins to freeze. The man is surprised, and turns around as the entire area has become timeless. He wonders what's going on, and then he hears a loud commanding voice saying that he has all the tests, and he turns to see a deity floating down. The man asks who he is, and the deity says that he is the one who can send him to the past. The deity says that there is no way a human can understand the logic of the heavens, asking if he thought a mere creature and some materials could make traveling back in time possible. He says that the true materials of this technique aren't these objects, but rather the efforts he has offered to gather them all, and he has passed the test, as he has lived his life with one goal in mind, sacrificing everything else, and that forgiving Ryongja was the last test for him. It was actually the toughest test out of everything, but he passed it so easily. The man says if he's passed the test, then to please fulfill his wish and send him back. The deity asks what he plans to do. The man says that he will kill everybody who deserves to die, and save those who don't. The deity asks if that's really all he wishes for. The man continues, saying he wants to live a meaningful life, and the reason he was so desperate is because he regretted the way he lived, and had too much anger for Mogi. The deity asks him specifically what he regrets, and the man says everything. Ever since he was born, none of his actions were out of his own will, and they were all driven by something else. He is pushed around by so many others, and before he realized it, there weren't many years left. The deity thinks about it, and then smiles, saying that he's curious about what kind of life he will live now. He begins to disappear into a golden aura, saying that he looks forward to watching his journey. Time flows back again, and Ryongja is still apologizing. The man turns back to him, and Ryongja says that he knows it's shameless of him to say this, but please don't forget their promise, and then he must stop him from getting married. The man holds back his laughter, and walks towards the portal, telling him to stay well. Ryongja yells out, saying, don't forget about a brother, please. The man goes into the portal, and everything fades to white, and then he opens his eyes in his younger body to see a crowd full of people as he stands atop a platform. He looks up at a statue, saying that he's really done it, and that he has finally come back to the past. He notices something as he begins to feel a presence in the air, and he looks up towards where it's coming from, to see a man staring down at him. The man's eyes are full of complicated emotions, and we learn that it is his father. His father is surprised as we see the man smiling at him with warm eyes, and then somebody yells asking how long he's going to keep them waiting for, and slams his sword into the ground, telling him that it's time to fight. The man says that he sees, and that he remembers this day, as it is the day of the new demon skirmish. The man explains that his father, the heavenly demon, declared that he won't limit the selection of the next cult leader to only his own bloodline. This caused an uproar within the cult because that meant that anyone could become the heavenly demon if they were strong enough. His father showed that he was serious about his announcement and launched a fighting competition amongst the next and original leaders of the cults, the new demon skirmish. The victor of the skirmish would be given a chance to challenge one of the heavenly demon's two sons. Whoever wins in that fight will be given one wish for the heavenly demon to grant. We see his opponent telling him to give up while he still can. The man stares at him with a blank expression, saying that he remembers clearly that he felt offended that he chose him. His decision meant that he thought he was an easier target than his older brother. He bribed the cook in the kitchen asking him to mix the energy dispersing poison into his rice so he can't use his energy. He ended up losing the match due to this dirty trick and tried to tell his father, but he didn't say anything. In fact, he looked at him with eyes full of disappointment. After this, the man did everything he could to try to make up for his defeat, but he kept failing over and over, which made him lose his position in the succession war. Everything started from the defeat he suffered this day. His opponent asks if he is distracted even though he is right in front of him. The man stares at him and asks what his name was again. The man gets embarrassed and introduces himself as Gu Pyongho. The man says he remembers and that he is one of the 7 disciples of the 8 supreme called Gu Chenpa, the Blood Heaven Sword Demon. This is his 5th disciple. Pyongho says that seeing as how he is messing with him, he must be confident in his abilities. The man glares up at his father, saying that he didn't know this in the past, but he now understands based on his father's eyes that he knew he was poisoned, and he was observing how he was going to overcome this problematic situation. Due to still retaining what he learned in his past life, defeating Pyongho without using any inner energy should be easy, but he can't show all of his skills that he needs to hide them. He raises his fist in the air, saying this in front of everybody that he will fight Pyongho without using any energy. Everybody is surprised, even Pyongho is, and they start saying that he has guts. They start chanting his name. For some reason, the translators put the actual translation rather than his name. So I had to dig through the novel to figure out that his name is GM Muguk. Pyongho starts to get worried that he is losing the crowd and says that he too won't be using his inner energy. The crowd goes silent and they start flaming him for killing the mood, saying that it is going to be boring if he doesn't use his energy either. Pyongho gets annoyed and grabs onto his blade, saying that his sword will cut anything it strikes. Muguk says that he feels foreign in his younger body and he wonders if he will be able to move it as he wants. Pyongho points his sword at him, telling him to unsheath his blade. But Muguk says he won't need it. The crowd laughs at Pyongho, saying that he is being looked down upon. He starts to get embarrassed and says that he won't kill him since he is the leader's son, but he will definitely cut an arm off, and leaps towards him. Muguk sidesteps the attack, saying that his body is able to react instantly. Pyongho comes back with another full swing and we see Muguk back flipping over it in the air. Muguk lands and smiles, saying that he can feel how strong his heart is at this age. Pyongho gets annoyed and leaps at him again with an overhead attack, asking why he is smiling. Muguk looks up and realizes that this is an opening and charges directly into Pyongho, elbowing him in the chest. As his face falls forward, he quickly follows it with an uppercut, knocking Pyongho's head backwards along with some of his teeth out. He then grabs onto his collar so he doesn't fall over and pulls him in for more punches to the chest. Then follows it with a kidney shot, which causes Pyongho's feet to leave the ground. He starts to spit up blood and falls onto his knees. Muguk grabs onto his hand and asks if this was the one he used to poison him. Pyongho is surprised, but Muguk instantly knees his elbow, causing his bone to shatter out the side of it along with exploding the joints. Pyongho lets out a blood-curdling scream and some of the contestants watch in fear as he screams in pain. Muguk looks down at his opponent, saying that now that he has returned to the past, he will no longer let people influence how he lives. His father raises his hand and everyone waits in anticipation. He says he will grant him a wish and ask for what he desires. Usually people will request a weapon or a martial arts manual, and that's probably what everyone thinks he will choose as well. This time he will follow his instincts and he tells his father that he wishes to go on a hunt with him. His father is surprised and even Pyongho is confused why he is asking for something so basic. His father confirms that he just wants to go on a hunt, and Muguk smiles, saying that he has heard that his father enjoyed hunting when he was young and he would like to learn how to hunt from him. His father's eyes look like he was happy with the reply and then stands up, saying that they will depart tomorrow at dawn. And then we see him take his leave as all of the demon supremes bow towards their master. Muguk watches his father leave and then hears Pyongho mocking him, saying that he can't believe he made such a lousy wish. Muguk asks for his name again and Pyongho yells, saying that he is going to kill him. Muguk says he doesn't plan to live reckless like the rest of them. Back in his room, he is looking in the mirror, saying that he really is young again. But he can't stop seeing that it is a much different appearance than the old him that he was so accustomed to. He wonders what Mogi could be doing right now. Saying that if he can find him and kill him before he becomes strong, then he can resolve this matter easily. The problem is that he is hard to find. He appeared in Zhonghu as if he fell out of the skies. After he destroyed the Murim Alliance, the Unorthodox Alliance, and the demonic cult, he hid himself from the world. So there is no information on him. But trying to find him by telling the whole world his name would be a dangerous act of provocation. In the end, his top priority is to become stronger than Mogi. As he is hyping himself up, we hear a woman call out to him, saying that he fought very well today. He turns surprised and calls out to her as we learn her name is Leon, and we see that she is his bodyguard. She do got a body for garden. Maguk says that he didn't know at this time that her huge size was due to the martial arts she learned, and that it was all for his sake. It's called the body petrification technique. The user gains the ability to make their body as tough as a rock, and that's only known to certain people. The biggest flaw is that it makes the user really wide. She threw herself in front of an attack that Mogi sent his way, living her final moments as a sacrifice to him. We see him looking at her with warm eyes, and she asks him why he's staring like that. He smiles, saying that he didn't realize her voice was so nice. He walks forward saying that she was ready to throw her life away, but he only thought of her as a simple bodyguard, and he took her for granted, just how people take having oxygen in the air for granted. That's the exact same way he did to her. He stands before her, saying that she's bigger than he remembers, and he smiles warmly at her. And she wonders what's going on. He explains how everyone said that On would grow up to be one of the greatest beauties in the world, but she suddenly went on a dirty bulk and appeared saying that she would protect him. He didn't know back then that she had cried so much after becoming fat, and he never noticed how her eyes became swollen due to that. He wonders how she felt as she gave up on her appearance when she could have become the greatest beauty in the world, and wonders how he treated her in the past, and says maybe he started to treat her worse after she got fat. His eyes look full of regret, and he says that he promises her this, that he'll get rid of the side effects that are making her fat. She asks him if he's okay. He recollects his thoughts telling her that he's alright, rather he's good, and she tells him that he's acting strange. He says as expected of On, she notices instantly that he has changed. He grabs his sword saying that he'll go show her something even stranger, and she asks where he's going. He says to deal with a rat. It jumps to a restaurant as we see all of the staff greeting him, and he asks why they did it. An older man asks what he's talking about, and Maguk glares off to his side looking at a specific man asking him why he poisoned his meal. Everyone is surprised, and the man instantly says he didn't do it, and Maguk asks him if he gambled away the 300 yang he received. Maguk explains that the boy has a great debt due to his gambling addiction, and he spent away all of his parents' money, even the money he borrowed from his friends. He bows telling Maguk that he's committed a grave mistake, and that he's blinded by money. Maguk asks him if Pyungho personally gave him the money, and the man says yes. We instantly see his thoughts scattered across the room after Maguk swung his blade. The other staff are worried, and Maguk says shame on him. A cook of all people dares to poison the food of others. The older man quickly apologizes, saying that he will take responsibility for this. Maguk asks why he's at fault when the other man is the one who poisoned his meal. The man says that everything that happens in the kitchen is his responsibility. Maguk then asks him, as we learn his name is Lim, if that means everything that happens in the cult is his father's fault. Lim says that's not the case. Then Maguk says exactly, so why is he trying to take responsibility for this? He tells Lim to stop talking nonsense and cook him shredded chicken noodles for dinner, as it's been a while since he's had it. Lim is confused, and On says that he just ate it a few days ago. He looks back at her and can tell that she is curious, and he smiles saying that was a few decades to him. The next day at dawn outside of the Heavenly Demon Pavilion, we see his father asking him why he brought so much shit to their hunting trip. Maguk says that there are just things that he needed for the next few days. His father says that he only planned for a single day's hunt. Maguk says who knows, he might enjoy the hunt and want to stay for longer. His father glares at him saying that it's an ambitious dream he has, and it jumps to the mountains. We see them walking through the forest, and he tells Maguk that he's better than he thought. He says that he noticed that he was hiding his skills and says that it would be better to tell him. So he does, and his father says that he noticed. Maguk says that he's not a cat that hisses but a beast that hides its claws. His father stops walking, asking him why a beast would hide its claws. Maguk says that he hasn't thought about it from that perspective. His father explains that's why he's a cat and asks him how much of the soaring sword art he has mastered. The soaring sword art is passed down only to the heavenly demon's bloodline, and it's thought to be an extremely advanced martial art similar to the martial arts learned by the demon supremes. He tells his father that he's completely mastered it. Then we see him narrowly dodging an attack from his father. He says if he didn't turn his face his whole cheek would have been gone, and his father is surprised that he actually mastered it. Maguk asks him if he really tried to attack him without knowing if he did, asking him what he would do if he did not dodge. His father says that he would have simply paid the price of having lied to him, and that dodging it shows he's mastered it. Maguk says even so he has a face that resembles his, and it would not look nice with a scar on it. His father looks at him with satisfaction, and Maguk wonders if he went overboard. His father turns away saying that being able to master it at such a young age is really worthy of praise. Maguk is surprised as he has never received a compliment from his father before. He follows behind him, but he's enjoying this and thanks his father. We see his father looking at tracks on the floor, and Muguk asks him who he learned it from. His father says his older brother taught him. Muguk is surprised that he had an uncle, and his father tells him that he killed him when he was around Muguk's age. Muguk thinks about what to say and then tells him that he did great, which surprises his father. Muguk continues saying that otherwise he would not have been born. His father glances at him and then continues walking. Muguk says that even his father would have been hurt having to fight with his own family, and he's seen it many times in his past life. The stronger a person seems on the outside, the deeper their wounds are. His father says back then he could not find any other solutions. Muguk thinks about what this would mean as Muguk says that he had no other way to win the successor war. Muguk grips his fist saying that he hopes his father doesn't expect him to find a solution, when he wasn't able to either. He already knows that there's no need for him to even consider that because his brother is vicious and cruel. His father's eyes look a bit sad as he's glancing back at Muguk, and he says that he's speaking ill of his brother when he's not around. It jumps to some more mountains as we see them running up them. Muguk looks up at his father, and explains that he never got married in his past life. That's why he doesn't really know how it feels to have children, so he's curious what kind of existence he is to his father. He makes it to the top, and stands beside him, asking his father if there's something here. His father tells him that it's their dinner. Muguk quickly grabs his bow, and says they need to kill it then. His father asks how he's going to kill something that he can't even see, telling him to close his eyes, and feel his surroundings. Muguk says okay, and then starts to close his eyes. He explains that when martial masters try to figure out their opponents, they sense the vibrations in the surrounding air. People usually refer to that as the energy flow of a being. He can only feel one energy flow in the surroundings, which is his father's. His father tells him to send some of his energy out in a single line, without breaking that energy to make it thin, and think of his body as a ball of yarn, and to slowly stretch his energy out as if he is pulling a thread. We see it actually forming from his body, and his father asks if he's reached it. Muguk says yes, and he can feel it. His father asks what he thinks it is. Muguk starts to think about it, and he starts to wrap his energy around it, saying that he thinks it's a tree. His father tells him to search the area around it, and to do it slowly. We see the energy moving throughout the air as Muguk is concentrating on keeping it in a line. He reaches something, and can tell that it is some kind of animal with thick fur. His eyes open widely, and he says that it's a boar or even a bear, saying that the fur is stiff, and the body is long, so it could be either. His father tells him that he got it right, and it was a boar. He glances down at Muguk, saying that at first he was unable to guess it correctly at this distance as well. He looks back at his father warmly, saying that he was gifted with a body that learns martial arts quickly after all, and this much is not a big deal for him. His father looks at him with eyes full of suspicion. That night, we see a fire, and his father asks how he learned how to cook animals like this. Muguk says he learned it from a book. His father says that learning it from a book and doing it are two different things, and he seems too skilled at this. He tells his father that he's glad it seems that way. He says obviously he'd be good at something he's done countless times. He tells his father that he prepared what he's sitting on so that he could win his favor, and that it was worth carrying all of the heavy baggage. His father asked him if he only wanted to hunt with him to impress him. Muguk says no, as he knew it would not work on him, and he can become the successor even without his help. His father says he's quite confident, then asks him why he wanted to hunt with him. Muguk says that he had two reasons. First is because he wanted to learn whatever he could from him to become stronger, and that he's already succeeding at that. His father then asks what comes after getting stronger, and Muguk says that he might misunderstand, so he would like to explain himself. He's not trying to become stronger because he wants to become the heavenly demon, as he's still healthy and strong. He doesn't want to waste his youth trying to take his place, and that he is satisfied if he can learn the heavenly demon's martial arts by becoming his successor. He looks up at the stars, saying that he needs to learn the 9 calamities demonic art quickly, and master it, and go beyond that level, as even his father who had mastered it lost to Mogi, and that mastering it will be just the first step. His father then asks what the second reason is, and he's surprised his father's interest in it, and smiles, saying that he wanted to spend some time with him alone, as it's their first time doing this. His father lets out a slight smile, saying that's a useless emotion that'll get him killed. Muguk asks why it's useless, saying that he gets to spend time with the strongest person in the world, and makes examples that whatever his father does means that it's the world's best. His father glances at him, and then glances away back towards the fire, and gives him a slight nod of approval. Muguk says that whenever he tried to remember his father, he had no memories of him, as his memories of being scared don't count as real memories to him. In this life, He doesn't want to have those types, but he then says that this is for his own sake, not his father's. The next morning, Muguk says it's time to head back, and his father says they're not going anywhere. Since he came out to hunt with the heavenly demon, they need to at least kill a tiger before leaving. Muguk is surprised that he wants to stay, and his father says that he needs to stop standing around, and follow him. Muguk says yes, and quickly starts going with him, following behind. They head deep into the forest until they reach a bamboo area. His father tells him to close his eyes, and focus. The target is on the right side, 100 yards away, and that it's further than the last prey. He wants him to feel the wind this time, infusing his energy into it. Muguk says in all of his time learning martial arts, he never thought of infusing his energy into the wind. There was no one to teach him this after all, and none of the arts he learned did this either. His father tells him to release his energy like last time, and that he needs to be slow and careful. If he wants to use this in a real situation, he needs to be able to send out his energy as fast as he can. Muguk concentrates, and we see his energy getting more condensed. He can start to feel the wind, and wonders how to combine the two, as he is struggling. As he keeps trying to match the wind's path, something finally clicks as we see it forming along with the wind. He says that this is it. To infuse it is not to ride on it, but rather he needs to entangle the two together. We see it flying through the forest, following whichever way the wind takes it until it hits his target. He can see a tiger glaring at him. He is surprised, and screams to his father that there really is a tiger. His father is surprised, and Muguk asks why he is making such an expression. His father says that he can't get lazy in his training, and the more lines of energy he can maintain, the higher his chances of survival are. That night, Muguk pulls out liquor, saying this is his strongest trump card. We see his father drinking it, and he is surprised, saying that this shit is gas. Muguk says that it is too strong for him. Of course, it is just a lie. His father says that no demonic human would complain about liquor being too strong. Muguk says that, so what if he can't drink? Having a vicious heart is more important than drinking liquor. His father asks if he would be able to kill him in order to live. He says no, asking how a child could kill his parent. Honestly, this is a lie too. If he had enough reasons, he definitely would. It's his first time having a proper conversation with him, so how could he treasure his father's life, more than his own? He asks his father how he could kill him, and his father takes a sip, saying if he is hesitant about it, then he shouldn't say things like having a vicious heart. He looks down, saying that he guesses he has to learn how to drink strong liquor, then, he chugs it. We see that his father is making a caring expression. Later on, back at Muguk's house, we see him focusing on learning how to spread his aura out. He inhales and says, after focusing the last few days on training, he's now able to freely infuse his energy into the wind. He's also able to maintain 3 to 4 lines of it. He wasn't expecting his father to teach him how to discharge his energy. This is as good as getting an extra life because he'll be able to first find out the enemy that's trying to attack him. If he continues training, then he can release more than 10 lines at the same time. He might be able to neutralize any stealth techniques. He resolves himself to get even stronger than before, and then says that even his father, who was much more skilled, lost to Mogi because the heavenly demon pavilion was infiltrated. It is a place that is thoroughly guarded by 3 barrier formations, 6 trap formations, and a group of carefully selected elites, along with the 8 demon supremes, each in a different direction. In the north are the demonic swordsmen of the Northern Heavens Swords family, led by the 1/Sword Supreme. In the south, there's the demonic bladesmen of the Southern Heavens Blade family, led by the Blood Heavens Bladesman, Chinpa, that was mentioned earlier. In the east, there are the Iron Fist of the Eastern Fist faction, led by the Fist Demon. The west are the Western Illusion formation, led by the Soul-Stealing Demon. The northeast are the Faceless Swordmen, led by the Evil Smiling Demon. The southeast are the Drunken Swordsmen, along with the Demonic Drunkard. The southwest are the Poison Fangs, who research all sorts of poison, along with the Poison King. And finally, the northwest are crazy monks that follow the demonic Buddha. Lot of demons, huh? Back then, he thought the enemy had broken in from the outside. However, that was not the case, and he later realized that the outer defense was never broken. He's certain that someone among the 8 Supremes let Mogi into where his father was at. There could also be more than one traitor, as they were never found out. But it doesn't matter who it was, because he treats all of the 8 Demon Supremes as traitors. Even after his father died, not one of them sought revenge. Instead, they closed down the demonic cult. That's still an event in the far future, so he knows all about it, and he knows the kind of lives they've lived and what their last moments in life were like. He begins to walk forward, thinking about the task he has ahead of him, saying this time he'll make use of the 8 demon supremes through and through. As he gets to the door, he hears someone making fun of On and her dirty bulk, asking if Muguk is in the training ground. We see the man is bald, asking how many days he's been in, and why he can't wait anymore to get him out. She gets offended by the fat comment, and On asks what she's doing. She turns, surprised that he's come out, and he says that he told her to do her own thing while he was training, and asks if she was here the entire time. The man says that he's finally out, asking why he went in out of nowhere and sat in there for days. Muguk says that he is a disciple of Chinpa, just like Pyungho was, and that his name is Yang Po. You can say the reason he dares to act this way in front of him is because of his father. After he announced that anyone in the cult could become a successor, being the heavenly demon's son no longer feels special. In fact, it fueled the ambitious desires of many within the cult to defeat him. Muguk asks Yang Po what he wants, and he says that Pyungho can no longer practice martial arts due to him. Muguk asks if he wants him to go look after him or something. Yang Po asks if he thinks he's joking, and Muguk says he doesn't think they're close enough where they can have a serious conversation. Yang Po starts to get mad, saying that he needs to take responsibility for crippling him and apologize. Muguk can see through this act of camaraderie, saying that the best disciple of the Blood Heaven's Blademan hasn't been selected. That's why his disciples are trying to impress him by doing whatever it takes, and Yang Po wants an official apology from him so that he can claim credit for not making Chinpa look bad. Muguk smirks, saying he doesn't think his master would choose him as the best disciple just because he did this. Yang Po panics, saying that's not why he's here and that it's for Pyungho. Muguk tells him enough, and then glares at him, saying that he wants him to be the one to apologize. Yang Po asks what he has to be sorry about, and Muguk says that he spoke rudely to his subordinate, telling him to apologize to her. Yang Po is confused, and On tries to tell him that it's fine, but he says even if she's okay with it, he isn't. She doesn't know what to say, and Muguk continues, saying that he dared to speak rudely to his subordinate, and he wants him to kneel down and apologize. Yang Po sighs, asking if he wants him to kneel to that pork chop over there. Muguk starts to get pissed, saying there he goes running his mouth again. Yang Po says he would rather die than kneel to her. Muguk asks if that's really what he wants, saying that he will grant him his wish then, and he begins to unsheath his sword. Yang Po is surprised, and so is On. Yang Po says that he's finally gone crazy. Muguk points at him, saying that he needs to kneel down and apologize or fight him. The choice is his. Just so he knows, his master won't be pleased if he chooses to retreat. Yang Po asks why he's going so far, and Muguk says he doesn't care if they came looking for him, and he can understand if he's here to seek revenge, but he won't allow him to insult his subordinate. On still can't believe the sudden change in Muguk's behavior, and Yang Po starts to laugh, asking if he's really trying to kill him over a pig. Muguk says that's just how much she means to him. Yang Po draws his blade off of his back, and his boys try telling him that this is not a good idea. On tries to talk Muguk out of it, but he ignores her, and they start to have a WWE stare down. Yang Po says that since he's the son of the heavenly demon, he'll just take his arm instead of his life. He starts to wind up his attack, and everybody watches in anticipation. He then leaps in with his attack, slashing towards Muguk, but it's instantly avoided, and Muguk stabs the man through the head with his blade. Everybody is speechless, and Muguk says that his mouth was the cause of his death, and that he shouldn't have insulted his subordinate. As we see his blood drip down his blade, Muguk says that he should have apologized when he was given the chance. He draws his blade from his mouth, causing his blood to go flying across the courtyard. Yang Po's limp body starts to fall over, and Muguk glares down at him as if he just stepped on an ant, ice cold. His boys start running over, screaming out his name, asking Muguk if he thinks he can handle the consequences of his actions. Muguk says if they keep running their mouths, they'll have the same treatment, and they can tell everybody about what happened using his exact words, and if they say it any differently, he will come find them. They start to walk away with Homie's body, and On asks him why he did that. He asks what she's talking about, and she asks why he did something like that for someone like her. He says that she's still worried about him, even though she's been hurt emotionally. He says that this isn't because of her, and he killed somebody who simply deserved it. She says that Chinpa won't let this slide. Muguk thinks about it, saying it's understandable for her to be this scared. He says the 8 demon supremes all have great influence, and are very strong, and that their followers are people that even his father can't ignore. He has crippled one of Chinpa's disciples and killed another. He tells On that he won't do anything because he has nothing to gain from getting involved, saying he would only be criticized for teaching his disciples wrongly. On says that his pride might get hurt, though, and he tells her that he does not have such pride. He sees that she's worried, and he puts his hand on her shoulder, saying in any case, she doesn't need to worry so much about him. We see her catch feelings, and he says on the contrary, he will gain something out of killing Yang Po. He crushed Pyongho in a fight, and now killed Yang Po. He'll be able to attract everybody's attention now. If points were given out during the succession war, it would mean that he scored himself another one. An thanks him for what he did today, and she smiles, saying that she was really happy that he took her side. She says that she means it from the bottom of her heart. He smiles at her, saying that she better be thankful, and she can't forget this for the rest of her life. He walks off proudly, saying that he wants her to keep smiling, and he wants her to live her life happy. That night, we see him chilling on a rock, thinking about the day. He says that come to think of it, he was drowned in a sense of defeat after he ran away from the demon. The sense of depression was so great that he wouldn't have been able to continue living if he hadn't put all of his time and effort towards the goal of regression. He wonders how things would have gone with his life if he never found out about it. He then senses something as he looks over to see his own reflection in a blade. He realizes whose blade this is, and what this must mean, as we see Chinpa standing behind him, holding the blade to his throat, and that Chinpa looks hella pissed. Muguk says he didn't think he'd get here so quickly, and wonders if he can dodge his sword, saying no matter how much knowledge he has gained from his past life, his inner energy is severely lacking, so he probably won't be able to. He starts to think about what to do, and then feels the aura from the sword dissipate as Chinpa sits down beside him. Muguk looks over at him, and he sees him smiling. Chinpa asks him why he did it. Muguk says he did it because he acted like a fool. Chinpa asks him to explain, and Muguk gets to the point, asking if he came to pick a fight with him or not. Chinpa doesn't say anything, then kicks his sword up and puts it back to his throat, asking if he should cut his head off and show it to his father, asking if he thinks he will care. Muguk says he doesn't think he could follow through with it, since he would have to deal with his father. Chinpa's expression does not change, but he withdraws the blade, drawing a line in the ground with it, making a long line and then a short one at the top. Muguk is confused and asks him what it is. He says that this is how much his father cares about him, and the small portion at the top belongs to him, and that he takes the majority. Muguk looks over at him, then looks back down at the ground and makes his own mark, saying that he's his son still, and he'll probably matter at least this much, and that he would take 7, and Chinpa would take 3. Chinpa smiles and laughs, saying that they'll only know if they test it out, wondering if he would be killed, or left to live if he brought his head. Muguk says that he's underestimating the love of a father. Chinpa tightens the grip on his blade, saying this is why he said he should test it out, and begins to release his aura yet again. A shiver runs down Muguk's spine, and he turns with a smile, saying there's no need to test it out, as he only has 2 sons, and there's only one Chinpa. Chinpa smiles, saying that he's not as foolish as his disciple. Muguk stands up, saying that if his disciple was anything like him, he would still be alive. Chinpa calls out to him, saying that he's lived his whole life with misfortune, and he hopes they don't meet often. Muguk says he'll be sure to remember that, and then he sees Chinpa is no longer standing there, and that he was too fast for his eyes to even follow, as he's already leaping over the trees. Muguk looks at the empty rock and begins to feel a pain on his side. He lifts his shirt, and we see 2 bruises. We see it was from earlier when he lightly tapped his side. Muguk realizes that he needs to train more to recover his strength, and that Chinpa might look like he acts carelessly, but that's not the case, as he's calm and calculative, and that everything is planned meticulously. The fact that he repeated twice that he would carry his head to his father means that he really was thinking of doing it, and that him coming here must mean that he left a deep impression. His request to hunt with his father was unique, and that he came here as a test to see if he was fit enough to be the successor, and wonders if Chinpa will be his first opponent of the 8 demon supremes. It jumps to Muguk meditating inside of his room as we see his blue aura begin to condense into a line. He feels something, which stops him from meditating, and he quickly heads outside as we see him stepping onto his roof. He looks up, and we see his father on the far end, and he calls out to him. His father glances over at him, saying that he heard he killed the disciple of the Blood Heaven's sword demon, changed from bladesman. Muguk thinks about what to say, and then says yes, as he was a disciple deserving of death. His father then says whether he deserves to die or not doesn't matter, as the Blood Heaven's sword demon has come looking for him in regards to that matter. Muguk asks what he means, and then his father says that he wants him to receive punishment. Muguk asks if he is saying that Chinpa really went all the way to him, so he would be punished. His father says indeed, and that was quite unexpected, as he is not someone who would usually make such a request over a single disciple dying. Muguk realizes that this must be Chinpa trying to test the relationship he has with his father, and he wants to see whether his father will punish him or not. Then he would also find out if his father considers him as one of the candidates. His father can tell that he is thinking about something and says that he does intend to punish him. Muguk is surprised and tells him that there is no justification for him to do so, and his father says justification can be made. Muguk wonders what he is thinking about. Muguk wonders what he means, and his father brings up him asking which demon supreme he trusted the most when they were hunting. Muguk says yes. He recalls how back when he asked his father that question, his father did not answer him. His father tells him that it turns out that he doesn't trust anyone, not even the demon supreme. He mentions how Muguk told him that hierarchy and discipline need to be set in order within the cult, and that he doesn't need to give him bullshit like corruption needs to be gotten rid of, and he wants to hear his true thoughts. His father stares at him, waiting for a reply, and Muguk thinks about how to word it. He finally comes up with something, saying that he feels like somewhere along the line they have lost the path to the demon. His father seems genuinely surprised by that answer, wondering what he means by that they lost the path to the demon, so he asks him what the path means to him. Muguk says he thinks that the path to the demon would be the belief that only their cult has to defeat absolute evil. His father makes yet another genuine reaction, asking him what he means by absolute evil. Muguk says that he doesn't think the Orthodox faction is the direct opposite of their cult. His father asks if not the Orthodox faction, then who would be? Muguk continues by saying it would be the absolute evil. The air suddenly gets tense, and he continues, saying that he is referring to the absolute evil that no human in the world can bear. Even demons would despise and turn away from them. The justice and chivalry that the Orthodox faction advocates for might be able to deal with the lesser evils, but they won't be capable of dealing with absolute evil. After all, the Orthodox faction is fundamentally rooted in being forgiving, and as long as they value people, how could they be a match for evil that has forsaken humanity and runs rampant? They are the only existence within the Murim that can get rid of evil that's wicked by being even more wicked. When the great evil that even the Orthodox factions can't kill kneels in front of them, he thinks that's when they will truly accomplish the path of the demon. His voice resonates through the air, and he continues, saying if they can't accomplish the true path, they won't be able to go far, and they must punish themselves so that they can survive. His father looks towards the ground, thinking about it, and Muguk can tell that his father is truly lost in thought, as he has never heard something like this before or even thought because he didn't learn this or realize this from when he was in the cult. That is how he felt when he wandered the Central Plains for his whole life. His father asks if he has any more arrogant thoughts, which surprises Muguk, but he says no, and that's all he had to say. His father says now he knows why Chenpa wants him to punish him, as he's seen something in him, and he wants to use him to test Muguk. Muguk says he probably saw the possibility of him being a successor candidate. His father says yes, or maybe he's just seen someone who will mess the cult up. Muguk says, that old man has good eyes for noticing the extraordinary. His father makes that same look as he did when they were hunting and tells Muguk to follow him, and Muguk asks where they'll be going this late. We see they have made it to the minor heaven cave as they stand before the doors. Muguk explains that this is a place where a candidate or someone very close to the heavenly demon would go to be tested, and going in is easy, but if they can't get through the trials in it, they'll be stuck within it forever, and it has a success rate of about 50%. Half of the people who are blood related to the heavenly demon that went in have lost their lives. This place is so dangerous that even his overly ambitious brother hasn't mentioned that he wants to go in, but this is a place that he must pass at least once if he wants to become the heavenly demon. Muguk asks his father if he's planning to get him to go in, and his father says he went in around his age. Muguk asks how long it took for him to get out, and his father says it was 2 months. Muguk is surprised, as his father is known to be the most talented in martial arts among all the heavenly demons so far, yet it took him that long. His father says he was the only one to make it out in 2 months, and the rest on average take 3 years. Muguk asks if he's really being told to go in there without preparation. His father says this is the form of punishment, as he told him about on the way here. Muguk begins to sweat nervously, thinking about it. He says his father is sending him into a place where he could die just to punish him, asking if he really doesn't care about him at all, or maybe he's wishing that he could become stronger and come out of there alive. Muguk's worried face slowly turns to that of him smirking, and he says that since he's come down to this, he'll try to come out even earlier than his father did. His father begins to grin, and he tells him to just focus on staying alive first and foremost. Muguk heads inside as he begins to pass through a very strangely designed hallway. He wonders how terrible this place is going to be for so many people to get stuck in here. As far as he can see, there are no enemies, so he continues to walk forward down the hallway until he comes across a stone tablet with instructions on it. It says, first, cut down all your enemies without using sword aura or enhanced sword aura. Second, if you cannot succeed within the time limit, you shall be given another chance 10 days later. Third, those who are ready, stand within the crimson circle. Muguk looks around and sees some grain bowls and wonders if that's supposed to be what he eats while he is here. But he decides there's no time to waste, and he'll start right away. He heads straight into the circle. He begins to hear a sound as he turns to see the room fill with dolls immediately. There's not just a couple, there are tons of them, and they all have red marks drawn on them. He says that must be where he is meant to slash them. He quickly begins to follow the guidelines, cutting one's head off and then the other in half. He looks for his next opponent and continues forward, following the red marks for each and every one of the dolls, as if he was dancing with his blade. As soon as he finishes, he stops himself from sliding too far, and then sees another red mark on the next doll. He says these dolls are much tougher than he thought. One begins to go down to the floor, and he realizes it would be extremely bad if he let it. So, he quickly charges forward, dealing with the one that is trying to get down. But, in that same time frame, 3 more begin to descend as well. He dashes forward as fast as he can, cutting one in half, following it with a head strike, cutting another one in half, while simultaneously killing the next. He slides once more. But he has too much speed to stop. As the last one begins to go down as well, he grits his teeth, then shatters the ground due to the force he generated from charging forward. The other doll continues going down, now only has its neck visible, which is luckily where the line is. He gets it at the very last second, cutting the doll's head off. He sighs, looking around the room, saying he almost had to spend another 10 days here because he let his guard down, and it would be impossible for him to get through this first trial with his skills before regression. A door opens, and he begins to approach it. As he does, he looks up to his right at another tablet that lists how many tries it took others to succeed. Somebody did it in 9, another in 16, another in 37. Others complained, saying they might die here and that they've tried to go back, but they can't. Finally, somebody else said they succeeded in 6 tries and considered themselves the strongest. He then spots some familiar handwriting on one of them, calling them idiots. It's none other than his father's words. He laughs, saying although his father's not wrong, he can't believe he berated their ancestors. When Muguk gets to the next room, it is full of weapons adorned all over the walls. He looks closer, saying that seeing how there are so many types of weapons, this trial seems to be one where he'll need to make use of them. The stone tablet for this room gives him instructions. First, use the swords hung on the wall to split the stone in half within 2 hours. Second, you may use your aura. Third, if you cannot succeed within the time limit, you shall be given another chance in 20 days. Our boy does as instructed, standing on the crimson circle, which causes the floor to open up, and a stone platform rises with a ball on it. Muguk looks down at it, asking why he has such a long time limit to cut such a small ball. If he uses sword aura, he could cut hundreds of these in 2 hours, so there must be a reason for the instruction. He grabs one of the blades off the wall and swings down, leaving the ball unscathed as the sword breaks. He says that he guesses slashing it won't work. In that case, he'll use his enhanced sword aura to cut this in half and quickly move on to the next trial. As he begins to channel his aura into his blade, he realizes something and begins to withdraw his aura, pointing his sword down, saying it would be too easy to pass like this. He wonders how the others did it. One person said they did it on their first try using enhanced sword aura. Someone else said it took 89 tries to cut it in half without aura. The others are just wondering how the hell it could be done. One person claimed they didn't even have sword aura to begin with, and they started calling out the guy who said he did it without aura a liar. Muguk wonders about his father and says, absolute nonsense. If there's heat, you lose. Muguk wonders why he said that. His usual self would just berate them and get it over with, like he did in the first trial. He recalls the wording on the stone, you may use it rather than telling him to use it. He realizes that this trial must truly only be passed without using sword aura at all. What his father said was some sort of warning, to not use enhanced sword aura because heat is generated when enhanced sword aura is used. He swings down again, breaking a sword, then an axe, and even a hammer. We see him gassed out, saying he can't even leave a scratch on it, and he wonders how he's meant to split this without aura as his time is almost up. He begins to debate using sword aura, but holds himself back and lets out a sigh, saying his father must have done it without sword aura. Then he thinks about it since it's his father and says there must be a clue. He begins to focus his aura into strings, directing them straight toward the ball. He starts inspecting it and realizes something, saying he can detect a faint line that he couldn't see with his eyes. He raises his blade, focusing on where the line is, saying this is not an illusion, and the faint lines form a perfect circle around it. He readies himself, then swings his sword, cutting the ball in half, following the guidelines that he sensed with his aura. He happily yells, saying that he did it, and inside the ball, he sees an even smaller ball and recognizes it as the demonic essence pill. We learned that the demonic essence pill is something that, if a demonic human who has learned demonic martial arts consumes it, they would be able to get a tremendous amount of energy. If he had cut the ball with enhanced sword aura, the pill would have exploded due to the heat. This is a reward that's given to the person who cuts it just with the sword. He smiles and thanks his father for warning him not to create heat. He begins to channel his energy to consume the pill. It starts to go toward his face, then his core begins to shine as the energy swirls out from around him as he successfully consumes the pill. He opens his eyes, lets out a sigh, and then stands up. He immediately starts throwing hands with the air, saying he can feel a strong power in his body that he didn't feel before. The thing he liked most was energy, and now he's acquired it. In the next room, the rules are laid out. First, differentiate life and death. Second, if you fail, you shall be given another chance 5 days later. Third, when you are ready, stand in the circle. He wonders what kind of trial this will be, then stands in the circle. The floor opens up as another stone tablet rises out of it, with things on top of it this time. He looks towards it, then looks closer realizing there are herbs on display. He says this must mean that he needs to identify the poisonous ones from the non-poisonous ones. He smiles, saying he searched everywhere for the ingredients that Ryongja had asked for and that he knows how to differentiate all sorts of herbs and poisonous plants. He even knows their effects, so this is going to be a free trial for him. He grabs one, saying this is the only thing that is not poisonous. It looks a bit familiar. The tablet then begins to go down, and he's surprised as another one takes its spot. He guesses they want to prevent anyone from getting lucky with this trial by guessing, so they want them to go through a second test. He takes out the next non-poisonous herb, and the tablet goes down. He stands there as nothing else happens, and he wonders if that was the end. Then he hears the doors opening to his left and walks over, passing by the tablet. There are people talking about how they're going to become poisonous humans, saying there must be a clue somewhere to figure out the herbs. They mention they have to research it. Some guy finally did it on his 96th attempt, and another guy went bald. He says, "Me too, bro. Me too." The final comment says not to count on luck, and Muguk smiles, saying that was his father. It means he remembered everything he ate, starting from the first test. Unfortunately, they were able to keep their hair. The final trial says he needs to survive the illusory life and death trap formation. If he dies in the formation, he will truly die. Those who are ready need to stand in the circle. He says this is the first time there's been a serious penalty on the trial as it could lead to death. He overhears people on the tablets talking about how it was a tough fight and how they never want to step into this formation again. One of them says when he becomes the heavenly demon, he'll find the guy who made this and kill him. His father, once again with simple words, says, "Don't rest." Muguk wonders what that means, thinking it might be advice for how he should live his life from now on. The area around Muguk begins to fade out. When he glances to his side, before he realizes it, he's in some kind of wasteland. He wonders how they got wind and all this landscape to feel so surreal, as he's able to touch the sand and pick it up. He can't fathom how they created something like this. Then he begins to hear a lot of footsteps and looks around to see that he is surrounded by martial artists. He says that although they are illusions, he can really feel their presence, even their intent to kill him, and that this is truly a great opportunity for him. He unsheaths his sword and swings it down, showing them he is ready. The horde of ghouls begins to charge directly at him. As they get close, he senses something and dodges forward as there was a surprise attack from behind. We see him counter with a stab to the head. When the enemies try to capitalize on his movement, he quickly blocks and leaps into the air over them. He says that since he's not dealing with humans, he can fight them all without hesitation. He channels sword aura into his blade, slicing a good chunk of them in half. Thanks to the demonic essence pill, he's able to use his internal energy easily. The enemies still point their blades at him as they refuse to give up. He looks around, waiting to see who will come first. He notices which group is closest and waits for them to do something. That group leaps through the air directly at him. He takes a deep breath, then exhales as he begins to emanate a blue aura. As all the enemies go to attack him, we see him slice with his sword, leaving visible blue lines across their bodies in different areas. Of course, we know what's about to happen. Immediately after, before they can even react, they are all cut into pieces by Muguk's attack, some true devil may cry type shit. Blood flies across the arena as their bodies are cut into literal pieces, and they fall to the ground. He swings his blade to clean the blood off of it and looks around, wondering if it's over. Then he senses something, which surprises him. He says it would be such a pity if that was all, as he begins to feel something even more powerful approaching. It jumps to sometime later in the battle as Muguk cuts off one of the heads of the enemies. As he senses something, he matrixes under an arrow. We see that he is visibly gassed out as he continuously has to dodge, with the enemies only getting stronger and stronger. Now, he understands what his father meant by don't rest. This is the first battle that feels real ever since he regressed. Fighting continuously with his life on the line makes him feel like he is finally catching up to where he was in his past life, and that his old instincts are now becoming one with his current self. A whole ton of throwing knives get launched at him, and he spins his sword around to deflect them all. But that's not all, as he actually launches them back, following up with his own counterattack, taking out some of the mobs. He starts thinking to himself, saying that the enemies need to come out even faster and stronger so he can hone his skills further. He slices another martial artist straight down the middle, and we see blood flying up into the sky. The remnants from his aura linger as the corpse falls to its knees. He stabs his sword into the ground, using it for support because he is gassed out. He then sees the area around him shifting back and wonders if it's over. We see that he is drenched in sweat and that it's fully back to the other room. He begins to walk toward the next tablet, which congratulates him on passing the trials. The tablet expresses hope that his strength will be used for the advancement and prosperity of the heavenly demonic divine cult. Muguk smiles, saying that he passed all the trials in just one day, whereas his father took a month. He realizes that if people knew this, the cult would be in an uproar. People would doubt his achievement more than praise it, so he decides there's no better choice than to stay and continue training, sharpening his skills further. It jumps to a time skip, and we're back at the pagoda. His father looks down at him saying he took 100 days. Muguk replies that he did his best but wasn't able to beat his father's record. His father asks if he cut the stone ball the proper way, and Muguk says yes. He mentions that he didn't rest at all during the final illusion trap formation. His father clenches his jaw, then immediately smiles. Muguk is surprised that he just caught his father smiling. But when he looks up again, his father has a stern face, and Muguk wonders if he saw it wrongly. His father says that at least he's not a fool. Muguk responds saying of course, he is the great heavenly demon's son after all. His father seems satisfied with that response. Muguk explains that before he regressed, he thought his father enjoyed pitting his children against each other in life and death fights. But now, he thinks he understands his father more. He realizes his father is someone who would endure his children's deaths if it were for the sake of the cult. He knows for sure now that his father doesn't simply enjoy watching them fight. We then hear a voice, and an older man steps forward, saying it's incredible that Muguk made it through in just 100 days. This man is the second in command of the cult, the chief advisor, Shama Myung, and the person Muguk's father trusts the most. Muguk greets him, saying it's been a while. Myung says he's glad to see him here because there's something regarding the cult that he wanted to discuss. Muguk is surprised that Myung wants to discuss cult matters with him, as it implies that his father supports this. Myung explains that last year they received an anonymous letter about ongoing corruption within the demonic army. Muguk begins to think about this, knowing the demonic army as one of their combat groups and that its leader is the blood-related sibling of Chinpa. He wonders if Chinpa is involved in this too. Myung goes on to say that they conducted a separate investigation but it ended in failure, as the officer dispatched was killed. Muguk asks if the demonic army killed him, and Myung confirms, saying the person responsible committed suicide afterward. Realizing the implications, Muguk knows this is dangerous. He acknowledges that anyone found complicit in corruption will be executed, and those involved will go to any lengths to hide their crimes. Even as the investigation officer, they won't let him off easily. He asks Myung if he is really being sent to do something that could kill him. Myung says yes, of course. He will have to put his life on the line for this mission. Muguk looks to see what his father is thinking and realizes this must be another test. His father reminds him that Muguk had once said he would control the ball and hold them by their leashes. Muguk says that would be something he did after he had become the heavenly demon. His father asks if he is scared to do this. Knowing he can't refuse, Muguk agrees to take the mission. His father remains stoic, but I think that's a look of pride. Though Muguk is unsure of his father's true plan, he vows to put on a good performance for him. Muguk then requests to have a drink with his father, as it might be his last chance, but his father instantly gets up and walks away. Left with Myung, Muguk awkwardly comments that his father acts tough on the outside but actually cares for them. Myung says that's not the way he sees it, and Muguk cringes. Back outside, we are introduced to Seo Darion, a special investigation officer from the Nirvana Pavilion. Muguk looks annoyed, asking why Darion is here, as he specifically asked for the most beautiful woman from the pavilion. Darion jokes that he must be the most beautiful woman in his leader's eyes, further annoying him. Muguk brushes it off, saying they should just get to work. Darion asks if they're leaving right now, and Muguk says yes. Muguk then turns back to Darion, asking what kind of person the demonic army commander is. We learn that his name is Gu Chenyang, the younger brother of Chenpa, and this is his 8th year as commander. Under Chenyang's leadership, the demonic army has risen to a level where everyone acknowledges them as an elite force. Muguk comments that it just means they're good at their work, and Darion agrees. As Muguk walks up the stairs, he stops and turns back toward Darion, who asks him what's wrong. Muguk questions if Darion doesn't intend to investigate the corruption in the demonic army. Darion says he does, but Muguk asks why he's so monotonous, as there's no enthusiasm in his voice. Darion explains that even if they uncover the corruption, nothing will change. Muguk wonders what he means, asking himself if Darion is implying that unless the executives of the cult are changed, nothing will happen. Muguk continues walking forward, then asks Darion if he's not scared, and Darion responds that he's not. Muguk presses further, asking how that's possible, given that the previous officer died. Darion reveals that officer was his direct superior and the person who taught him. Muguk now understands why Darion acts the way he does. It's not monotony, but sadness. We are taken to the demonic dragon court as two men are asking someone where they are from. We see it's none other than Darion and Muguk. Darion introduces himself, saying he has business with the demonic army commander. Muguk is surprised by how bold he is. The guards start to laugh, saying he doesn't look special at all, maybe in the head, though. They tell him he can't come through without permission. Darion opens his book and takes out a document, saying here is the official order. The guards stick to their previous words, saying they'll report to their supervisor. Darion says there is no need because they will meet his supervisor personally. The guards tell him once more that he can't enter without the permission of the higher-ups. Darion asks if they're going to stop a special investigator with an order document. The guards ask him what kind of bullshit he's talking about. Special investigator or not, once he's here, he follows their rules. Darion starts to panic as they keep calling his orders bullshit. The guards say exactly, the only thing he is going for him is his title of special investigator. Other than that, he's powerless. Darion looks worried, and Muguk finally speaks up, asking the guards if they know who he is. They say they do, and he walks forward, asking if that's so. So, despite knowing his identity, they dare to behave this rudely, as he kicks them both in the nuts. He did not have to do the boys dirty like that, on God. They fall over in pain in front of Darion, and Muguk tells him to stop standing there and lead the way. Darion says alright, and as they head further inside, they are greeted with even more men all waiting for them. Darion asks if they can't see this, and if they plan to stand in their way as well, threatening them with prison. Some of the men laugh, while others stare at him. Somebody yells from the back of the group, asking where these assholes came from and why they are trying to create a ruckus here. Darion says that he is the special investigator and would like the man to reveal his identity. The man introduces himself as Go Dang, the first corps captain of the demonic army, asking if that's good enough. Darion recognizes him, saying he is notorious for committing atrocious deeds even among the demonic army. Muguk waits, as the man walks forward, asking why they aren't saying anything. Darion introduces himself, telling the man to watch his tone as he is here under official orders. Dang asks what he would do if he didn't. Darion says they will all be arrested on charges of disrupting the investigation. In a mocking tone, Dang starts to laugh, asking if he really thinks that would be possible. All the others laugh at him, and Muguk watches quietly. Dang stops, making an angry face, sarcastically saying he's so scared and would like to see him try. Darion looks nervous, and Muguk walks forward, telling Dang it's been a while. He offers to shake his hand, saying the last time they met was at a banquet. Dang asks what the hell he's talking about, and Muguk grabs his hand, crushing it as he says they have business with the demonic army commander, so enough with the hazing and let them pass. If he dares to slack off, he'll lose his hand forever. Dang tries to maintain his macho, saying some people misunderstand things, thinking swords don't work on them because they're of noble birth. Muguk asks if he really thinks he'll be able to wield a sword again with his hand broken. Dang says he'd like to see him try, but he steps aside, proving he's all bark. Muguk thanks him for complying, saying he'll buy him drinks next time. Daryon asks how he knew him, and Muguk says that's the funny thing, he didn't. Daryon, surprised, asks why Dang stepped aside then. Muguk explains he broke Dang's hand when he shook it, and now he'll have to eat with only one hand for a while. Daryon thinks he's crazy, but Muguk tells him to stop yapping and lead the way. As they head up, Daryon says the office is on the 7th floor. They encounter yet another guard who says they can't go in without an appointment. Muguk sighs, saying he's sick of this and tells them to step aside as they are here on an official investigation. When the guards say they can't do that, Muguk holds the document in the man's face, saying to stop this document is to stop the cult leader himself. He adds that if they truly don't respect the cult leader, then they can try stopping it. A voice from inside yells to let the second young master in. Inside, an older man greets them, as he is sitting down, and apologizes for his men's rude behavior, saying they are ignorant, and hopefully, they understand. This man is the demonic army commander, Chinyang. Muguk senses an unfathomable level of strength from Chinyang's seemingly normal body, and that energy is making Daryon uncomfortable. Muguk carefully considers his next words and says the men outside seem to have a lot of time on their hands since they were picking fights, suggesting they should read more books. Chinyang calmly replies, saying there's a saying that the ignorant are brave. Muguk counters, saying these days, those with knowledge are braver, as they not only devise strategies but also understand what needs to be done. Chinyang nods in agreement, admitting he's fallen behind the times. Muguk is surprised at how calm Chinyang remains, even after this exchange. Chinyang asks why Muguk has been tasked with this investigation. Muguk admits it's his father's way of punishing him. Chinyang seems intrigued by this. Muguk explains he made a small mistake during a hunt, which causes Chinyang to burst into laughter. Muguk wonders if they were curious about why he was sent here as an investigator. Chinyang then asks why the Nirvana Pavilion started the investigation in the first place, asking if there was another anonymous letter like last time. Daryon quickly says they can't reveal that, but Muguk admits they received another letter. Daryon wonders why he yapped it, but Chinyang, sighing, says he knew it. Being in charge of the demonic army, which consists of rough individuals, means he often receives slander and hate, and it's exhausting. Muguk says that they'll finish the investigation as soon as possible and he hopes they'll understand if it causes inconveniences. Chinyang asks what he means by inconvenience, saying that's really sad and he thought the relationship was more than that. Muguk says it's a known fact that Chunpa is supporting his brother. Chinyang says even if that's the case his brother is his own person and so is he. And he wants to support Muguk. Muguk grins and laughs, saying hearing that makes him feel more confident, and he'll count on Chinyang's cooperation in the coming days. Chinyang says he'll be counting on him too and he'll prepare a place for the two of them to stay in after they leave this room. Muguk says that's perfect and then goes to leave but Chinyang tells him to be careful though as he is really worried about him. Muguk asks if he is referring to the incident where the previous investigator was killed and Chinyang smiles saying not that and he's sure the cult leader didn't send his son here to die and rather he is just concerned. Muguk thanks him for his concern but says that he wants to leave. As he goes to leave Chinyang's face instantly shifts from that of smiles to a very different expression. He a little creepy. Whereas Muguk's expression shifts from one of a serious tone to him smiling as he says it seems like father sent him here to make sure either him or Chinyang does die. Back to his father's room. Myung is saying that this is not a light matter at all and he should have been the one to take care of instead of sending Muguk. His father tells Myung that Muguk told him they've lost the demonic path. Myung asks if that's why he sent him there. All because he said that. Father raises his blade up, saying that if he dares to talk big then he ought to prove it with his own actions. Myung looks surprised as he thinks that he is just trying to get rid of his son for talking. It jumps yet again to a dead crow hanging. All of the people inside of the demonic dragon court are wondering why the hell there is just a random crow, and they call Muguk and Daryon obnoxious, saying so what if they are investigators? Muguk says the ones that stopped him at the entrance are the ones complaining the most. We hear a man yelling, asking if this is too much. As he enters the room, we see a scar on his face. Muguk asks who he is, and he says he is the 3rd Corps commander, and his name is Jang. Daryon recognizes him, saying that he has the strongest martial prowess among the Corps commanders, but he's also got a real bad temper. Maguk asks him if he has any complaints, and Jang asks if he has to spell it out for him, asking what they were doing by putting something like that in a place where people come and go. Maguk says that someone within the demonic army threw that onto his bed, so he thought it was a cultural thing. Jang says instead of doing something so unpleasant, he could have just punished the one who did that to him. He and Maguk exchange glances at one another for a few seconds, and then Maguk nods, saying he will start with him then. Jang asks what he is talking about, and Maguk says the investigation. Jang starts to get angry, asking what he was talking about. Maguk tells Daryon that he needs to submit all records of Commander Jang, anything finance related, and every movement, even if they seem small. Jang says that not even Maguk can do something like that to him. Maguk glares at him, saying that he can. We then hear a loud bang as Jang has stomped the floor in front of him. Maguk tells him to listen, saying he is free to get all riled up, but don't forget that he could be charged with treason if he stands in the way of their investigation. All of Jang's men quickly gather around to try to stop him. Maguk repeats once more, saying that he will start the investigation with the commander. Jang gets pissed but says that he will see this out until the end. It gets quiet as we are taken to a room with Maguk on one side of the table, and Jang on the other. Maguk thinks about how to start this, and Jang looks pissed. Maguk asks him how long he plans to test him, and Jang asks what he means. Maguk says that he is the one who sent the letter. Daryon is surprised, wondering where the hell this outlandish accusation came from, and why Maguk would think so. Jang asks him what he is talking about, but Maguk's confident gaze does not shift. Jang's does though, as he looks down at his hands and asks him how he knew. He begins to twiddle his thumbs. Maguk says he got involved in the Crow incident even though he didn't have to, and that was so he could avoid being suspected by Chinyang. Jang says that's right. Maguk says that also the third corps members are the most under control, and when he hung up the Crow, only his subordinates did not laugh or curse. Jang is surprised by how attentive he is, and Maguk says that a little while ago his subordinates also worried about him, and stopped him. Maguk says that he could tell from those actions, and that someone who ran a group in that manner would probably find it hard to overlook any corruption within the organization he is in. Jang is silent, as he didn't expect to be found out so easily, but that's not the only reason Maguk made such a guess. Maguk recalls when Daryon told him about Jang and his temper, he remembered something from his previous life. An incident where the strongest corps commander had died, and he probably got killed by someone because he sent the letter to resolve the army's problems. Jang says he didn't know if the letter would work, so he didn't write the exact details down, though he never imagined that the second young master would come to perform the investigation. Maguk asks what he thought about it when he heard. Jang says that he's sorry, but he thought that they were truly done for. Maguk sighs, asking if it is popular for youngsters to be so honest these days. Daryon says that he's younger than them though, and Maguk says my bad. In any case, what on earth is happening in this place? Jang's facial expression shifts once more to concern, and he says that Chinyang is using the army for his personal reasons, and he's been taking money for assassination requests, and making his subordinates do the jobs. Maguk's surprised, saying that he thought he was just getting bribed by some martial arts group, but this goes far beyond what he had imagined. This is already a serious problem for the army to have martial masters moving as they please, but now they're moving merely for financial gain. Daryon asks how this is possible, and Maguk says by adjusting the numbers of members within the demonic army, the first corps would probably be the ones doing it. Jang's taken aback, asking how he could possibly know that. He says just like how he knew after he saw how the third corps reacted, that the first corps members were the first to stop them, they were also the ones who cursed the most after seeing the Crow. Maguk asks Jang how he figured it out. Jang looks down at the floor, saying that the martial artist who was said to have committed suicide after killing the previous investigator was his friend, and he was the first person to send in that letter. Maguk asks how close he was with him. Jang starts to bite his lip, regretting it, and says he had joined the cult at the same time as him, and that they were basically family. Maguk then asks him who he thinks killed him. Jang says that Chinyang gave the order, and that Dang personally killed him. Maguk says if what Jang is saying is true, then there is an immense corruption case, as the entire First Corps is involved. They've even gone as far as to kill an investigator, and he wonders if his father or Myung really doesn't know about this. He's sure that they do know to a certain extent, and he's trying to test him to see if he can resolve the incident even though he's up against Chinyang. Maguk tells Jang that he had a good friend. Jang says he was a good friend indeed, but if he had been a good friend back, he would have done something about his death. Maguk and Daryon give him empathetic looks. Then, Maguk, thanks Jang for being courageous. These are words that Jang really needed to hear, as his eyes begin to water up, and he starts crying some manly tears. Bro is a great friend. Daryon looks down at the floor while Maguk is lost in thought, and he says that looking at this, he's starting to feel some hope for the lost demonic path. There are those who really want to fight the corruption. The heavenly demon divine cult that he wants would be a place where people like them are taking important roles. While Jang died in his previous life, he will not be dying this time, because the objective of his regression is to save people who should not die. Daryon tells Maguk that he's quite different from the rumors he's heard about him. Maguk asks what kind of rumors they would be. Daryon says that there are some rumors that say he isn't suited to become the heavenly demon, and that he's sorry. Maguk looks over at him, saying that's fine, as that could also be received as a compliment. To him, being suited to become the heavenly demon is not praise. Their cult right now is not one ruled by terror, and it's about time that something changed around here. Daryon is surprised by this. As Maguk walks away, he says that the cult has to change, and if not, what awaits him would be the extermination of his family, and the end of the cult. The next day, somebody in the Nirvana pavilion tells Maguk that there's trouble, and that he needs to come take a look right away. As they run inside in a panic, Maguk looks concerned, as we see Daryon covered in blood, as well as another man bloodied on the ground. Maguk yells, telling them all to stop, and he asks Daryon if he's hurt badly. Daryon says that he's fine, but his colleague is severely injured. Maguk can tell that his ribs are broken, and says that they need to get him to the infirmary quickly. As the men carry everybody off, Maguk and Daryon wait, and Maguk turns back, asking Dang if he was the one who did this. Dang says that's right. Maguk asks what the reason is for harming an investigator. Dang says that he bumped into his shoulder in the corridor, and walked away without apologizing, so he simply taught him a lesson. Maguk says that he's sure he's the one who bumped into him, and he wouldn't have let him go even if he did apologize. Dang glares at him, and then begins to laugh, saying that's true. Maguk says they're poison, which makes him stop laughing, and he asks him what he means. Maguk says that Dang's and his subordinates are all poison to him, and Dang asks what kind of nonsense he is talking about. Maguk says that he also killed members of the cult in this manner last year too. 2 years ago, he also killed 3 members after getting into a fight with him at a bar. All of his opponents were low-ranked martial artists. Before things blew out of proportion, the army covered it up for him. Dang says that there are too many rebels that don't revere the demonic army in the world. Maguk asks if he knows that he possesses the authority to decide an execution. Dang is surprised, and the room falls silent for a second, and everybody looks worried, but Dang laughs, asking him so what, saying that he doubts he's capable of performing it. Maguk says this is exactly what he was talking about. Fools would act that way when they're conscious of how others around them see them. This ought to have been a situation where he would have been nervous, but instead he's acting tough in front of his subordinates, and his head is too far up his own ass, and he's standing on the stage without realizing what kind of play he's in. Maguk begins to walk forward, which alerts everybody, and they draw their weapons to prepare themselves. Dang laughs, saying to mess with them means he's messing with the army, and he wonders if he has that courage. Maguk says at the very least, he won't hide behind his subordinates. Dang shows that he's injured, saying that he should consider himself lucky. Maguk says that he will only use his right hand, and they should fight with just the 2 of them. Dang realizes he's about to get his shit rocked, so he starts making excuses by saying that he's going to just tell his father after he gets injured here, and laughs. Maguk says that he won't hold him responsible even if he dies here, and swears upon that. Daryon wonders what he's trying to do here, and Dang begins to smile, and then draws his blade, telling him they should fight then. Daryon then tells Maguk that Dang is ambidextrous, so he is as good with his left hand as he is his right. Maguk says this must be why he was acting so confidently, and he draws his blade with his left hand, pointing it at him. The air gets tense as the first sword swing comes out. As it was Dang's blade, Maguk sidesteps it. The force from the attack is enough to shatter the ground behind Maguk, making Daryon and some of Dang's subordinates catch strays. Dang then thrusts his sword towards Maguk, who flips through the air, and Dang tries to counterattack, but each and every hit is blocked or dodged by Maguk. When Maguk lands back on the ground, he charges forward, reverses the grip on his blade, slicing upwards, cutting off Dang's arm. As it soars through the air, Dang begins to scream at the sight of his own blood. Maguk gets tired of him yapping, so he smacks him straight in the face, breaking his teeth with the hilt of his blade. Dang falls to the floor, and all of his men begin to charge Maguk, saying that they need to protect their commander. Daryon calls out to Maguk, but Maguk glares at the oncoming enemies, and instantly kills 3 of them by stabbing them in the throat with his sword. As they fall to the ground, and begin to bleed out, Daryon and the rest of the men are surprised, and Maguk says that the crimes of those who just died are treason. Dang begs Maguk for his life, but of course, sounds like he has a severe lisp. Maguk glares down at him as if he was looking at a bug. As Dang crawls over, he feels nothing but disgust, and Maguk asks him if he knows what happened to the families of the people he killed in the bar that night. Dang looks up at him, because of course he doesn't. Maguk says that he doubted it, since he acted like he didn't care, but people lost their father, son, and a husband. Asking Dang if he thought they could return to a normal life, Dang realizes that he's about to die, so he begins to apologize, saying that he was in the wrong. Maguk tells him to bite the curb, as he stomps his head in, popping that shit like a zit. Everybody's face fills with horror, but Daryon's is disgust, and Maguk is just full of pure anger, asking him who he thinks he is to dare kill members of his cult. It then jumps to some women playing instruments, and I believe they are courtesans, as a man is pouring drinks. It is none other than Chinyang. He says he heard he ran into some trouble on the ground, and Maguk says it wasn't intentional, but there was a conflict. Chinyang says that the first corps commander was deployed because there was no choice, but there were too many things about him that were questionable. Maguk just thinks this dude is complete trash, and he's someone who served him, but instead of avenging him, he's making him into a criminal. Chinyang takes a sip of his drink and says that while he died during an investigation, he did kill one of the demonic army commanders, so he'll be in a tough spot if they decide to make it an issue. He looks up, asking what Maguk thinks about this, and that they should just bring this whole thing to a close. The deaths of 1 commander and 3 subordinates are more than enough. Maguk thanks him for his consideration, but says that he agrees with wanting to end things on a good note, but there's one problem. Chinyang asks what it is, and Maguk says there's no evidence. He came here for an official investigation, but he's got nothing to report to his superiors. Chinyang tells him to just make something up, but Maguk says that will not be possible, and the letter that was sent this time around said that external requests were accepted for money. It's not something that can be covered up lightly. Chinyang looks down at his drink, thinking about it, and Maguk says in order to close this investigation, evidence is required. Maguk stares at Chinyang as he takes another sip of his drink, and he says that he must be the one to hand over evidence to close off this investigation. Then it jumps to Daryon asking Maguk what he's doing here. Maguk says he's here to see the person who got injured, asking why he's so surprised. Daryon says that the demonic physician is giving him treatment right now, and thanks him for getting the demonic physician here in the first place. Maguk says that goes without saying, and while he's only a temporary investigator, they are colleagues who have been working together. Daryon is caught off guard. We hear an older man ask if the second young master is here. Maguk looks over, and we are introduced to the demonic physician. He is the most skilled physician in their court, and he doesn't simply treat anyone. He only gives treatment to those who are important. Maguk asks how his condition is, and the physician says that fortunately, his life is not in any danger, but he'll have to recuperate for a while before he can get back to work. Maguk says there are people who got injured while being faithful to doing the cult's work, and he wants him to use the best medicine for them. The physician says that he'll do just that, but Maguk notices something, wondering why their faces look so happy as they are all smiling at him. They then start thanking him, and he starts to feel uncomfortable, so he clears his throat and walks out. Daryon asks what the demonic army commander said, and Maguk says that he wanted them to end their investigation here and go back, and he wants to say that the first corps commander is the main perpetrator. Daryon says that his most important subordinate just died, and that's how he's acting? He finds it pretty odd. Maguk says he was not the most important subordinate, just the subordinate who was made use of the most, and someone else will soon fill that spot again. Daryon asks what the plan is now. Maguk says that since he's thrown out bait, he'll see what Chinyang does. Daryon asks what he means by bait, and Maguk smiles, saying that he'll tell him when he bites. Daryon asks what he should be doing for now, and Maguk asks for him to drink with him. Daryon thinks about it, and then smiles, saying that today's drinks are on him. Maguk returns with a smile as well. The next day, we see a lot of books on Maguk's desk, and Daryon says the demonic army gave them all of this. They are assassination request logs, and banknote papers that are worth thousands of nyangs, and they were discovered in the first corps commander's house. Muguk smiles, saying that he took the bait, and he wants him to find out who the smartest person in the first corps is. He's sure there will be someone who's strangely knowledgeable and smart, and that guy is the one who made these. He's going to go meet with Chinyang once more, and he'll need to buy some time to find that smart guy after all. We see him standing in Chinyang's room, saying that they received evidence, and Chinyang says that's great. Now all that's left is to settle this and celebrate with drinks, and he's already booked the place they were at previously. Muguk tells him there's a problem, and Chinyang asks if there really is another one, and what is it? Muguk says the evidence came from the demonic army, and they're supposed to find those pieces of evidence themselves. Chinyang asks if the origin of evidence matters that much, and Muguk says it does, and that the chief advisor is no fool. If he finds out that the evidence came from the demonic army, then he'll be suspicious of the investigation process and its results. Chinyang thinks about it, saying that he thinks about how Myung is definitely pretty smart, and asks Muguk what he thinks they should do. Muguk thinks they'll have to act like they're investigating for a while, and they'll do a large-scale investigation just for one day, and he hopes Chinyang can cooperate with him. Chinyang looks at him with a really face. Muguk asks if he thinks he wants to be doing this, and they'll just be doing the investigation as a formality, so he just needs some common official documents. Chinyang agrees, saying that he'll ask his subordinates to cooperate with him. Muguk realizes that this might just work, and smiles, saying what he needs aren't the top documents anyway. What he's looking for are the first few documents that were used to hire the army, and the wills that were left behind by those who went on dangerous missions. This is needed so that he can look at the handwriting and figure out who wrote the records and the request logs. We see a man tied up inside of a chair, and he is part of the first corps, named Yang Gu. Yang asks why Muguk has captured him, and Muguk stares at him, saying that it's because he forged the assassination request logs that were sent to them. Yang says that he has no idea what he's talking about. Muguk tells him that he knew he wasn't expecting him to say anything, and he probably only did as he was told, but he just needs him to be honest. Yang says that he never did anything like that, and he never received any orders. Muguk says he understands why he's acting like this, and he's probably scared that Chinyang will kill him. Yang is silent for a second, and Muguk says he can go back. Since he doesn't intend to answer his questions, he can't be helped, and he doesn't want to torture someone who's just faithful. Yang looks like he's in disbelief, and Muguk says that while the investigators will get to leave this place safely, Chinyang will eventually kill him. Yang asks what he's talking about. Muguk says that the demonic army commander has probably heard about them capturing him already, so what would happen if he left without any injuries? He's already going to think that he told them everything, and he's sure that Yang knows better than anyone else what Chinyang would do in response to that. A little later, we see Daryon talking to Muguk, saying that based on the guess of Jang, the demonic army commander is the one who ordered the killing of the Nirvana Pavilion investigators and Jang's peer. The person who executed those orders would be none other than Dang, who is already dead. There are also numerous other atrocities he committed. Muguk thinks about it, and Daryon just tells him flat out that they've killed a ton of people. But the demonic army commander won't just let himself be arrested. Muguk is silent for a second and says that he's not planning to do that in the first place, which confuses Daryon. He tells him that he's going to kill him. Daryon is completely caught off guard by this. Muguk explains that if Chinyang is arrested, then Chinpa will also make his move, and there's no way he'll watch his own brother get executed. If that happens, the situation will become far too complicated. There will also be plenty of forged evidence to show that no one had ordered Dang to commit those crimes. All those crimes will be pinned on a scapegoat, and then there will be a lot of slandering and scheming in regards to him. Most importantly, if they let the demonic army commander live, there will be people who will be killed to keep the silence about his crimes. Even Jang, who sent the letter, will eventually be dead. All the Third Corps warriors that try to protect him will also be killed. That includes Daryon. But if the demonic army commander dies in the process of being arrested, then the situation would be different. The only thing left to do would be to prove his crimes. Daryon looks worried, asking if he'll be okay, because Chinpa will seek revenge. Muguk says not everyone will seek revenge when their family members die. Especially the Blood Heaven Sword. He's not one to waste his life over revenge. Daryon asks where he's suddenly going. Muguk says he already told him, he's on his way to go kill Chinyang. Then he turns and smiles at him. Darion asks if he means right now. Then we see Muguk sitting at a table, saying they've completed the investigation, thanks to his help. Chinyong says he's glad it's over, and his heart feels lightened. He's sad it's time to part ways with him. Muguk says if he becomes the successor in the future, he'll definitely repay the goodwill he's shown him this time. Chinyong says those are his words, and he'll not forget that he has shown him goodwill by conducting the investigation without any issues. Muguk looks down and says he'll never forget this incident. It's because he's so greedy that there's no way he could forget. Muguk says he wants to drink to the end of this investigation. Chinyong says sure. Muguk starts pouring him a glass. Then asks him flat out why he did it. Chinyong smirks, asking what he means. Muguk says he should have more than enough money to use until he dies of old age, so why was he so greedy to even make use of the demonic army to take in requests for money? Chinyong again stares at him with that same face as last time, then sets his glass down, saying how would he know? He tells him that he should ask the dead First Corps commander that question. Muguk asks how a puppet would know anything. Chinyong asks what he's trying to insinuate. Muguk says he's curious about what he truly thinks. Chinyong stares at him, and Muguk continues, saying that he guesses there's nothing in that pitch darkness that's within him, and he must be filled with only greed. Chinyong smashes the cup and looks pissed, asking him if he has gone absolutely crazy. Muguk says he's the one who's gone crazy, taking requests that he never should have. Chinyong starts to release a powerful aura, sending the table flying, saying that he's had enough of his yapping. Muguk sits there, unfazed, continuing to drink. He looks up at Chinyong, showing that his eyes have no hint of fear. Chinyong wonders what's going on, then feels a sharp pain in his chest and looks down to see a sword sticking out of it. Muguk raises his cup, finishing his drink, as he used the soaring sword art, 5th technique, Heavenly Strike. He then drops the cup to the ground, shattering it, and stands up, calling out to Chinyong, saying that he is under arrest for the charge of misusing the demonic army for his own personal reasons and over 20 murders. Chinyong starts to have cold sweats. As his body starts to go into shock, he tells him that this is not an arrest though, as we see his blood dripping off the sword. Muguk smiles, saying he's going to be executed anyway, and he should leave this world early for the sake of those who will continue living. Muguk then tightens the grip on his blade and yanks it out of his chest, causing him to start bleeding profusely. Muguk stares at him. Chinyong starts to spit up blood from his mouth and chest as he starts to fall over, dying on the spot. We then see people from the pavilion enter the room, completely shocked. Muguk looks at them as they see Chinyong's corpse, and he yells, telling them that this is the demonic army commander, and in the process of resisting arrest, he died. The rest just look worried. Muguk says that Darion is to arrest all members of the First Corps and imprison them, as this case will be investigated officially. Darion bows and says, yes, sir. Muguk then tells Jang that all those under his charge, excluding any First Corps members, are to help the Nirvana Pavilion investigators to arrest the First Corps, and they've received the authority to take full charge of this matter, so his orders are equal to that of the cult leaders, and everyone is to execute this immediately. Jang puts his hands together, yelling, yes, sir. Like Darion. When he looks up, we see both Darion and Jang have very warm expressions because they found somebody they can actually put loyalty in. Muguk looks at them and smiles, also glad that he's found people he can trust. Muguk heads back to his father's pavilion and starts to walk back into it. We see his father sitting in his chair, with Chinpa and Myung there as well. They all turn towards him as he starts to make his way down the room. His eyes look locked in, and as soon as Chinpa looks at him, we see he's definitely a bit angry about his brother, but Muguk is not afraid of him. Muguk greets his father and looks up towards Myung, then over towards Chinpa, saying it's good to see him again. Chinpa asks if he's been well. He says he would like to ask about what happened in this matter. Muguk says everything is written in this report, so he can simply just read it. Chinpa says he would like to hear from him personally. Muguk thinks about it for a second and looks off to his side, saying that since these two are only observing, they must be trying to see how he'll reply. He says that, based on their investigation, they found that his brother had committed grievous crimes, and he tried to kill him in the process of being arrested, and he apologizes for his death. Chinpa says it's fine. If he committed a crime, then he ought to be punished, but there's something he doesn't understand. He might be pathetic, but he's not foolish enough to attack him in a situation where his crimes have been exposed. Muguk realizes that after he was caught, he probably asked his brother for help, and he knew that he killed his brother trying to nip the problem in the bud. Muguk says he has no idea why he did it, and maybe he simply couldn't accept the fact that he was caught by someone much younger. Chunpa says he saw his corpse before coming here, and it seemed as if he was stabbed in the chest with a single strike. It seems that his martial prowess is more exceptional than he thought since he could kill his brother in a single strike. Muguk looks off to the side, saying that is solely thanks to his father. While he was in an agitated state, Chinyang wasn't able to use his full strength against him. Chunpa starts to smile and says that he's thankful for him telling the truth, and he feels much relieved from hearing that. Muguk says not at all, and he feels sorry for him. He can't believe he's not showing even a hint of anger, and he's killed not just his disciple but also his brother. His anger should have its limits though. Chunpa bows towards Muguk's father. Muguk's father looks at him with eyes full of pity, but Chunpa shows that he doesn't need it. His father continues, saying that they'll need to make funeral preparations, so he should go and rest. Chunpa bows, thanking him for his consideration, and starts to head out. He passes by Muguk, and Muguk says maybe the Blood Heaven Sword demon wants to tell his father that he's gone too far, and asks whether he had to deal with the incident in this manner. As soon as the door closes, Myung says that was great work, and the evidence he's gathered is substantial, and the incident has come to a close without any issues, and they ask if he's hurt anywhere. Muguk says he's fine, and he thanks both of them for their concern. It seems as if Myung goes to compliment him, but Muguk asks what he wanted to say, and Myung says it was nothing. Somebody then enters the room, and Myung says that the cult leader has given him this as a reward for his hard work. He opens the box, and they see a very fancy-looking sword, and Muguk is surprised. Myung says that the cult leader has bestowed the black demonic sword onto him. Muguk says the black demonic sword is one of the treasure swords alongside the white demonic sword. Muguk smiles and tells his father if he wanted to give him a reward, he should have given him the white demonic sword, which suits his aloof personality more. His father takes in a deep breath and tells him that the black demonic sword suits him more. Muguk pulls out the blade, saying that it seems he knows too little about him. Muguk unsheathes the blade and says he can't believe it would unleash such cold energy even though he hasn't even infused any of his own into it yet, and he smiles while looking up at it. His father looks at him proudly, and even Myung can tell. Seeing that, he realizes his father is very fond of the second young master. Muguk sheathes the blade, saying to be honest, it feels like this is too great of a reward. Myung says that it's not. The problem with the demonic army commander was the most dire within their cult, and he hadn't expected him to resolve it in such a clean manner either. Myung asks Muguk's father if he was expecting this. He says no, and he thought he'd be lucky to survive while acting up. Muguk says he knows his father doesn't actually mean that because he only sent him there because he believes in him. His father knew he had mastered the soaring sword art, and he also knew that he had consumed the demonic essence pale, and believed that he wouldn't be killed easily. Although, he probably didn't expect Chinyang to die here. He looks back down at the sword, saying he knows why he's given him this blade as well, and it's a statement to Chunpa that while he acknowledges what he's done for the cult, he can't besmirch his son over this incident. Muguk immediately puts his hands together and bows, thanking his father so much for giving him the blade, and smiles, saying he's also grateful for what it truly means. His father's eyes really are full of pride for his son, but as he has to act dignified, he sits there in silence and says he may leave now. Muguk gives a slight smile and heads out of the Heavenly Demon Pavilion. We hear Chunpa saying that the son feels good today, and they should talk a bit before he leaves. Chunpa looks to his side, and Muguk says he knew he wouldn't have just left. Muguk approaches him. As Chunpa looks down at the blade, he looks slightly annoyed. Muguk makes sure he shows the blade to him better, and says the summer does feel hotter than usual. Chunpa then yells at the top of his lungs while releasing mad killing intent, calling him a whelp, asking how dare he ambush his brother and kill him, and that he's going to rip him limb from limb today and offer them at his brother's grave to appease him. Muguk has to close his eyes because of the heat emanating, and Chunpa is still furious, just glaring at him. He grits his teeth to the point it's audible, but immediately starts smiling instead, getting rid of his killing intent, saying that truly this is what he thought he would say. He goes to tap him with the hilt of his blade like he did last time, But this time Maguk stops it and calls him an old waste of space, saying that for someone who is so old, he has no maturity. How dare someone like him try to destroy the order within the cult for his own personal desires, and if he dares do anything for that corrupted brother of his, he'll chop up his body and make sure nobody can find him. We see Chinpa is low-key a little scared, and then Maguk does the same thing by smiling, getting rid of his killing intent, saying that if he had said that, that is how he would have responded. Chinpa can't believe what the hell he just witnessed, and starts laughing hella loudly into the air, to the point that it's a little disrupting for those around them, and it kind of hurts Maguk's eardrums. The other soldiers look worried, and then the laughter comes to a halt, and Chinpa says even so, he should have gone easy on him for his sake. Maguk says he tried his best to finish things nicely, and he wanted to end it by letting him step down. He truly did cross the line far too much. Rather, you could say the line never existed to him. Chinpa looks up at the sky, realizing that he's right, and says that he sees, while nodding his head. Maguk looks over at him and says that he surely also knew about the corruption within the demonic army, asking why he left it alone. Then Chinpa looks pained, saying that his brother wouldn't listen to him, and that it appears he's not that clean himself. When he heard that his brother died, he honestly felt relieved, though he does miss his brother. He thought to himself that he would no longer stand in his way. Maguk can't believe he's so honest about his relationship with his brother. They sit there in silence for a second while Chinpa is still looking at the sky, and Maguk tells him that he truly does understand how he feels. Chinpa is surprised, and Maguk says that he'll probably feel the same way if he heard it. If his older brother died too, he'd feel relieved that he didn't have to kill him himself. To Chinpa, this was surprising. They continue staring at each other, and Maguk wonders what he sees when he looks at him. Obviously, we know he was surprised, but it still rang too close to home. And you can tell that Maguk meant every single word of what he said. He looks up, saying that it looks like this year is going to get pretty hot. He starts walking away, and continues, saying that fortunately, he's not the kind to be weakened by the heat. Maguk says he was not able to figure out what he was thinking, and aside from the relief he said he felt, he might be scheming to kill him. Or maybe he'll just happen to let it flow by, just like how the clouds above are. Whatever the case is, Maguk does not regret his actions. In his training area, we see him holding onto his blade as he starts to unsheath it, saying that the initial moments after receiving a new sword are important. A sword communes with its warrior, and a supreme sword like the black demonic sword communes on a level that's far deeper than others. While a sword won't reject its warrior, if the communion doesn't go well, then the full prowess of the sword can't be brought out. Maguk smiles at it, saying it's nice to meet it, and from now on, he is the master. Again, it starts to release its cold energy, and he decides it's his turn to infuse some into it. He takes a deep breath and starts to imbue his aura into the blade. We see the reaction is pretty good, to the point that he even smiles. He says it's definitely different, and he likes it. He's now going to try out some moves with it, so he lowers it a little and readies himself as he dashes off the ground, soaring through the air, thrusting forward. He then raises his blade up for a follow-up and says he'll be surviving with this sword technique for a while. And he tells the sword that he'll show it more incredible martial arts in the future, and they should just hang on together until then. We see Maguk is now meditating, and then nighttime comes, and he's still training. Leon brings him some food but decides she doesn't want to disturb him. She walks away. Maguk continues training day and night, but it's not clear for how many days this has gone by, so let's just assume a good few. He then exits the training area, gassed out, and is surprised when he looks up to see an entire group of people in front of him, every single one of them donning a piece of red clothing. It's hard to tell if they are angry or happy based on their initial expressions. He says he doesn't know whether Chinpa sent the sword demons here or not, but what is very obvious from what he can tell is that quite a few of them are hostile as hell towards him, which he couldn't pick up from the picture alone, but he can based on their killing intent. He says they are all unleashing demonic energy in his direction, and if he takes on this much, internal injuries could happen if he makes a mistake. They continue releasing even more than before, and it starts to become a little much for Maguk. He says they want to intimidate him and make him into a coward that can't leave his house. And he remembers now, if he takes in this demonic energy from the martial arts, he could take advantage of it. We see his core swirl with a bright light. He is using the meridian strengthening technique. He says this is a secret technique that strengthens the meridian by having multiple martial artists discharge the energy and strike every part of the target's body. The more martial artists there are, the more efficient it will be, and this is an opportunity for him to make use of this technique to become even stronger. He says he is continuously absorbing all of their energy, and we see them sweating because it is straining their bodies as well. Finally, Maguk steps forward and starts making his way through the crowd, and they are all just surprised by this. As he is still channeling it into his meridian, he says that it has gone beyond the second stage and is advancing into the third. His face starts to become visibly strained, and he says he can push it even more. Everybody continues releasing their demonic energy towards him, trying to overwhelm him and cause him harm, but of course, nothing is happening except the light around Maguk is growing bigger and bigger. He says it is now passing by the fourth and heading for the last stage, which is the fifth, as we see a giant bright light. He slowly opens his eyes, surprised, as there is no more killing intent being released around him. He looks around, and their expressions are all low-key filled with fear because they didn't expect him to just walk it off like that. He stands in front of one of the men and glares at him. The guy is so afraid that he drops a log in his pants and backs away, creating room, but it is not just him, as even more start to create a path for him. He realizes that with this, it is settled that he is not somebody they can walk over, and he begins stepping forward, walking through the group. He smiles, saying that the sword demons have finally acknowledged his strength. He heads to the heavenly demon pavilion, and we see him looking at the throne, not really sure what expression he is making. His father asks if he wants to sit there. Maguk says no, and he doesn't want to be trapped by that chair. His father asks if he is trying to sound sophisticated again, telling him to come on up and sit down. Maguk walks up and does exactly that by sitting in the throne, and his father asks how it is. Maguk looks out through the entire pavilion, nods, saying it's cool, and then looks over towards a giant statue to his side. He thought he would feel excited, but he doesn't feel anything. His father says he felt the same way. Maguk says that his father killed numerous people, even his brother, to climb up to the seat, and he wonders what he felt if it wasn't excitement. He wonders if he should ask about it, but his father speaks up first, saying that the sword demons went to look for him on their own and that Chinpa did not tell them to do that. Maguk is surprised that he knew about it, and when we see it, his father looks a little annoyed. Maguk says he acted like it was nothing when he was enduring the energy they threw at him, refusing to be suppressed by them, but once he left that place, he started to tremble. His father looks over, asking if they were that scary, and he says that he thinks he was scared that his judgment was wrong. If anyone got agitated and tried to fight him, then he might have died back then. Even if he survived, he wouldn't have been able to become the successor after killing the sword demons. That's why he was scared, the fact that there could be another moment where he has to make a decision where everything is on the line. Strangely, when he had these thoughts, he missed his father, and he doesn't understand himself why exactly he missed him. His father tells him that a demonic human is not one that looks backwards, and they only look forward and advance. Maguk is surprised because, while it may sound odd, this is his father trying to comfort him. His father, of course, maintains his dignified expression, and Maguk realizes it, smirks a little bit, looking happy. He says that there's something else he's been thinking about too and that they should replace the statue here with a beautiful woman instead of a demon. For example, any of the famous 4 flowers from the Central Plains, and if they were to replace the statue with one of them. We see his father low-key looking disgusted, and Maguk realizes he might have made a mistake by making a stupid joke. He says that he started talking nonsense the moment he left, telling his father to sit down instead. He gets up and walks away from his father, making his way down the steps, then calls out to him, looking back, asking if he can kill Chinpa. His father is silent. I believe this is an amused expression. Maguk's father immediately starts laughing, saying that even if he could kill the demonic army commander, he stands no chance against Chinpa. Maguk wonders if this is a test, hence asks why he created conflict between them then, and that he should take responsibility for that. His father says that he will take responsibility, and he'll let him become the Nirvana Pavilion leader. Maguk says that's the Inspector Bureau, yet he wants him to be in charge of that. His father asks if there's something wrong because he said he wanted to make sure discipline and order are in place. Again, Maguk wonders what this could mean, or if he could be making use of him to resolve matters that he postponed. He wonders if maybe he doesn't care if he lives or dies. While he and his father continue their WWE stare down, Muguk decides that it's best to stop trying to figure out what his intentions are, and he'll just focus on making a decision based on what he sees and hears. He's someone who'd leave information on the walls for his children, but he's also someone who'd use his children for something dangerous if they're able to be made use of. He clenches his fist and tells his father that if he wants him to go out and kill a cow, then he should at least go out with a sword in his hand. His father asks if there's something he wants, and Muguk thinks about it, saying that he wants to be allowed into the Heavenly Demon Archives. His father is surprised, and we learn that the Heavenly Demon Archives is a place where all sorts of rare Murim sect manuals are kept. Only a small number of people, including the Heavenly Demon, can enter there. His father says that if he thinks he can learn some kind of supreme martial arts just because he goes in there, then he is gravely mistaken. Just looking at the titles, there would be too much for him. Muguk says that it's true, as there are far too many manuals there. Even if he gets lucky and finds one of the top martial arts manuals, it would be on a similar level as the soaring sword art that he already knows. He smiles, saying that he would like to test his own luck. His father seems confused, saying that he doesn't know what kind of impure intentions he has. Muguk sweats nervously at him saying this, and his father says that he will allow him to enter the Heavenly Demon Archives for 7 days. Muguk thanks his father, and then it jumps to the archives, as we see that it's just a giant-ass library. At least it looks pretty nicely organized. Muguk says he went back to the Heavenly Demon Divine cult that was closed down for the sake of getting the secret demonic soul. At that time, he was supposed to be dead. It had been decades since he left, and his face was disfigured, so nobody recognized him. It took him a long time to go from being a normal warrior to climbing to a rank where he could meet the new cult leader privately. He was able to hear about a certain martial art from the cult leader at the time. It was called the 4 Strides of the Wind God. It was the greatest mobility art that consisted of just 4 moves. It was said to be a supporting technique for the Heavenly Demon's martial arts at one point in time, but at some point, knowledge of it went missing, and it was no longer passed down. But the person who obtained the 4 Strides of the Wind God was said to be Yobikdo, the cult leader at the time. We see Bikdo saying that he was able to become the cult leader because he found the lost 4 Strides of the Wind God in the Heavenly Demon Archives. Muguk says that if its manual is in there, then why do people think it was lost? And he says that it's because it wasn't kept on the bookshelves. Muguk looks down to his right as we see him staring at the floor, and there is a book under one of the bookshelves. He lifts it up with one arm. Damn, that boy's strong. We get a flashback of him asking Bikdo where it was. Bikdo takes a fat sip of his alcohol, saying that the precious manual is used to prop up the 19th bookshelf. Muguk then pulls it out, and it's dusty as hell. We see that it's been here for so long it's even got an imprint. He looks happy, saying that it really was here. He opens it up and starts reading it. It says that just 4 steps would be enough to walk all over the world. He smiles and explains that the 4 Strides of the Wind God has 4 main moves. The Shadow Step, the Flicker Step. Path of Exile is calling. The Death Step, and finally the Swift Step. The first step, the Shadow Step, is used when trying to infiltrate a place. At the start, it would only be used to avoid being detected by one person, but as you get more skilled with it, you could increase that number, and once you master it, you'll be able to disappear even if multiple people are staring straight at you. The second is the Flicker Step, which is used for defense. It's a technique that will definitely help you find a way to escape even when unavoidable attacks are coming toward you. The third is the Death Step, which allows you to charge into enemies and pierce through and neutralize any form of defense they have. The last is the Swift, a mobility technique that is said to be so fast that the word fast is an understatement. It's much closer to that of Barry Allen in a Murim world. We see Muguk sitting there meditating, and we get a whole 7-day time skip outside of the pavilion. It then jumps to his father's pavilion. We hear him saying that he's returned, and he bows, greeting his father. His father stares down at him, and we see that his eyes are full of curiosity. He asks what he learned at the archives. Muguk smirks a bit, saying that he learned a mobility art. His father asks what it is, and he tells him that it is the 4 Strides of the Wind God. We see that his father is shocked, telling him that he doesn't want to hear any nonsense, and asking if he's saying that he learned the Shadow Step that was lost. Muguk says he doesn't have the guts to lie to him over something like that. His father looks at him, still a bit skeptical, telling him to show what he's learned. Maguk asks what he'll get if he does so, and his father takes in a deep breath and says that he'll spare his life. Maguk smiles, as this is the answer he expected. He starts to release his aura while getting ready to use the shadow step, and his father is surprised to see it. The ground itself beneath Maguk begins to resonate. He then opens his eyes widely and starts to activate the first step of the movement, which of course we know is the shadow step. We see his feet start to fade out in front of him. This is the most we've ever seen Maguk's father make a facial expression. He starts to audibly gasp at what he's seeing, because what's in front of him is Maguk dancing around the room using the shadow step, with his lower half barely even present, and at some points, it's as if his entire presence itself is erased. His father asked where he learned the 4 strides of the wind god, and Maguk looks up at him, saying that he learned it in the heavenly demon archives. His father asks if he really dares lie to him. Maguk wonders why he can't believe it to be true. His father says that the 4 strides of the wind god didn't exist within the heavenly demon archives. Maguk says he definitely learned it while there, and his father starts to ask if he's really insisting on lying. Maguk asks if he's certain that it couldn't have been there just because he's read numerous books, and it could have been stuck on another shelf where the foot technique manuals aren't at. His father looks at him, saying that he knew the manual was in there. But Maguk says he didn't, and he was trying to learn any other martial art and found it by coincidence. His father looks at him with eyes full of suspicion, but Maguk shows no hint of lies in his eyes. His father asks him where it was. He says it was being used as a support at the bottom of a shelf. The shelf was still crooked, and he found it when he tried to make it straight. His father lets out a sigh, saying that he knows the important part of the manual had been removed. Maguk asks how he knew that, and his father says that's because it is something that he would have done. He then starts to walk towards his throne and stops, saying that he wants him to tell him the steps. Maguk thinks about it and smiles a slight bit, saying that he knew this would happen. His goal isn't to defeat his father and become the heavenly demon. It is to kill Morphine and save his father and everyone else here. Besides, he was intending to help his father travel the world and enjoy his life before he steps down as the heavenly demon. So it's not a problem for him to teach him the 4 strides of the wind god. But he tells his father he doesn't want to. His father turns, glaring at him, and Maguk tells him that nothing is free in this world. His father, realizing he's right, says that from what he remembers, he taught him a technique at the hunting ground for free. Maguk says that was the price for the liquor he drank at the hunting ground. His father can't believe how sly he is and asks how on earth he held himself back until now, calling him bold. Maguk smiles, saying that he's held himself back until he grew to this extent. His father asks what he wants, and Maguk smiles, saying that he wants the heavenly demon defense art. It protects one's body and is an exclusive martial art that only the heavenly demon can learn. If he learns that, it'd be as good as getting an extra life. His father tells him straight up that's just not gonna happen, as it can only be learned by the heavenly demon and the successor. Maguk says that they can just keep it a secret then. His father looks surprised, and Maguk says that the heavenly demon defense art isn't something that can be seen on the outside anyways, and if he secretly teaches it to him, nobody would know. His father, realizing now that he's completely caught up in this, stays silent. Maguk says he's gonna take his leave and think it over, and he'll get back to him. His father says in return, the 4 strides must be taught first. Maguk turns, surprised that he went along with it so easily. Since they're talking about it now, he wonders if he can teach him immediately. His father smiles, asking if he's not even suspicious, and if he's not afraid that he won't teach him the heavenly demon defense art after learning his side. Maguk tells him not at all, and we see that his eyes look full of respect for his father. He says that he's not someone who'd do something that embarrassing in front of their own son. His father realizes he's right and tells him to go ahead and explain the steps. Maguk says yes, and he starts doing it, and I shit you not, it's just pages and pages of straight enchantment table, and him and his father exchanging glances, with his father just showing off that he's just a straight genius. We also get a scenic look of the city, which is kinda gas. His father's still channeling his aura, but then opens his eyes. They look very calm. Maguk asks if he needs to hear it once more, but his father says it's fine, as he immediately starts to fade out from where he was standing. Maguk is surprised as he turns around to see his father using the first step, just like Maguk did, dashing all around the room. Muguk says that this is different from his too, and if this is his father's own interpretation. He then looks back towards the original one, and his father looks at his hand, saying that that was actually a really good martial art. Muguk realizes that his father is low-key the goat, and says that after regression, the biggest change has been created. He doesn't even know if Mogi would be able to defeat his father, who's learned the 4 strides of the Wind God. His father says that he'll uphold his end of the deal now, and that he'll teach him the heavenly demon defense art, and he'll only say it once, so he should memorize it well. Muguk says of course, and immediately, we see it jump to him with a bruise on his forehead. Bro did not get it down. We hear Leon screaming, asking who on earth laid their hands on him, and that she'll go deal with them. He says that he doesn't need her to go eat their food, and that it was his father who hit him. She realizes that she can't do anything against him. We get a flashback to him practicing the heavenly demon defense art while in a lotus position. He exhales and says that he actually learned it successfully. He tells his father that now they share a secret. He's more happy about that than having learned the heavenly demon defense art. His father then flicks him in the forehead, killing him instantly, telling him not to get so cheeky. Muguk asks if she's not going to go deal with it, and she tells him that she protects, not attacks. He smiles, saying that she never dared to make such jokes in her past life. As he's walking by, he calls out to her, and when she looks up, he says that he can't do it now. She's just confused about what that means. He says that he'll definitely fix the side effects of the body technique for her. They stare at one another, but we see that her eyes are full of nothing but hope, because she genuinely believes in him. And of course, Muguk believes in his own words as well. Muguk continues by telling Leon that he told the co-leader that things have to change around here, into a place where people no longer have to damage their bodies in order to protect others, so that this place can become somewhere people like her don't have to do what they don't want to. He smiles at her warmly, and she's just surprised. But of course, she can't help but feel the utmost respect for him. He then walks forward, calling out to her, saying that she needs to listen to what he's about to say. She puts her hands together, saying yes sir, and he says that from this moment forth, she is hereby fired as a guard warrior. This actually startles her, and she asks if he's being serious, and if he's actually firing her. He says that she has now been chosen to become the captain of the Phantom Shadow Corps. She's confused by this because there's no such group as the Phantom Shadow Corps. He smiles, saying that's because he's going to create it, and it will be one that reports directly to him. She says that he's making her the captain of a group that hasn't even been created yet. He says that he's going to ask her once more, and wonders if she wants to become the Shadow Corps captain for his sake. He smiles at her again. There's a very warm feeling as she puts her hands together, and she says that she will accept her order. That night, out at the market, we see it's still pretty full of people. Off in the corner, Muguk is standing there, and he says that he told Leon he'd be creating a group that serves him directly, but by no means is that a simple task. In order to run an organization, a large amount of capital is required. To get that, he'll be making use of an incident that happened before he regressed. A man yells, saying that his name is Yang Dang, and that he is in charge of this mission. This is a highly paid mission, and it's also dangerous, so they need to stay locked in. Anyone who dares to do anything idiotic will die by his hands. We see him talking to Muguk, saying that he heard he joined the mission under the recommendation of Daryon. Muguk says yes, and Yang Dang asks if he can trust his skills. Muguk asks if he'll acknowledge him if he can cut him, and Yang Dang tells him not to be arrogant, as they're in a world where the head of an arrogant person falls really easily. Muguk says he'll follow his orders well, so not to worry, and he's content as long as he's paid. Yang Dang says that he'll be keeping an eye on him. Muguk looks off to his side, and we see a mother and daughter looking a bit anxious. Their mission is to escort them safely to Nunping. He intends to save them, as they died in his previous life, and he waves towards the little girl, who nods back at him. The mother then nods her head back, as they head into the carriage, and we see them riding away through the woods. Nightfall comes, and Yang Dang says they'll be resting here, and he tells everybody to eat as much as they can, because they don't know when they'll get the chance to eat again. Some people are annoyed that it's just beef jerky, and some of his boys tell him that he just needs to eat it so he won't feel hungry. Muguk watches, saying that he heard they were ambushed by vagrants from the outside, and not even their corpses could be found, and no one even knew how they were killed. That night, the stars are at their brightest. He hears a man coughing violently, and when he looks over, the dude is straight retching blood. It's not just him, but every single person who consumed the jerky seems to have just straight up died from poisoning. Muguk is surprised by this, and we hear Yang Dang asking him why he's okay. Muguk turns, realizing that he's the one who did it, and that he put poison into the food he gave out. Muguk says he didn't eat any of the food he gave him, and Yang Dang pulls out his blade, saying that it would be better if he had died from it instead. Muguk can't believe the leader was the one who poisoned the food, and tells him that his life is pathetic, and if he really intends to earn money just from killing his comrades. Yang Dang says that he's going to buy as much liquor and women as he can after this mission, and Muguk asks if he really killed all these people just for that. Yang Dang calls him an idiot, telling him to worry about his own life. We hear a man saying that it looks like it's over. A masked group of men now arrive on the scene, and Muguk says they're all pretty strong. Yang Dang asks why they're already here, and the dude yells for the woman to come out of the carriage with her daughter before he burns it down. It opens slightly, and they come out looking scared. He says they sure hid well like rats, and he was scolded for not being able to find her. We learn that his name is Warrior Quan, and she begs that he at least spare her child's life. Quan thinks about it, and says that he'll spare her for the sake of their relationship. He then starts yelling at her, asking if that's really what she thought he would say, calling her a bitch. Then she had to be kneeling and begging for mercy, and how dare she act like she is higher than he is. The little girl starts to cry, and even the mother does too, saying that if he spares her, she'll give him 10 times the money he's supposed to get. Quan says that he doesn't want any of that useless nonsense, as her father has already been caught. Her heart starts to sink, and then Quan looks over, surprised, seeing Muguk waving at them to try to lighten the mood. Quan asks who he is to Yang Dang, and Muguk steps up, saying that he's someone who's received money to bring the two of them to their destination. Quan asks Yang Dang if that means he's not a subordinate, and Yang Dang says that he's just a vagrant that he hasn't dealt with yet. Quan tells Yang Dang to get rid of him now, and Muguk says they're nothing better than street thugs that would betray their own master, asking if they really think they'll be getting rewarded like this, and they'll probably kill him and tie off the loose ends and take his share. Quan gets annoyed being compared to street thugs, and Muguk says he's actually speaking politely since the child is here. Quan calls him a crazy bastard, asking how dare a vagrant talk to him this way. Muguk says that he's only angry because he hit the nail on the head. Quan then orders his men to kill Muguk first. Muguk then points that out to Yang Dang, saying that he said first, meaning he's next. Yang Dang is surprised and turns, wondering if it's true, only to catch something directly in the back of his head, and his eyes roll up. As we see, he gets hit with a throwing weapon from Quan, killing him instantly. Quan says that that fool was too damn sloppy, and that he knew he shouldn't have entrusted things to somebody like him in the first place. Muguk looks down at Yang Dang, but his eyes low-key look like they have pity in them, and he says this is what happens to those who betray others for money. Quan asks his men how long they're going to listen to that asshole ramble for, and they start charging in. Muguk smiles and tells the mother to cover the eyes and ears of the child. She nods her head and does so while closing her eyes as well. As all three of the men go to take him to Paris, Muguk watches as the blades come in and uses the death step from the 4 strides, surprising Quan to see him immediately in his face. Quan yells, asking how he got so close and what his men are doing, only to see behind him that all of his men's heads are floating through the air. Our boy is the goat. As their corpses fall to the floor, the mother is surprised, but so is Quan, and he yells, asking who he is. Muguk says that's his question, asking who the hell he is. She says that the one known as Quan is one of the vassals that protects her household, and that she is the daughter of the Golden Manor Master, and her name is Jiam Sayin. Muguk says this is why he hid his identity and joined as a vagrant warrior. Her father is Jiam Asu, one of the top 10 largest merchants in the Central Plains. He's the richest man in Fujian and the master of the Golden Manor. There was an incident where the Golden Manor Master was betrayed by his most trusted vassal and lost his life, and his daughter died as well. Quan realizes that Muguk's paying him no mind and thinks this is an opening, so he draws his blade. He starts slowly swinging it towards Muguk, but we see that Muguk blocks it without even having turned around. Quan's vision starts to shift more and more, as what he sees is his headless corpse standing behind Muguk. He was just that much faster. As his head starts to roll on the floor, Seian is so shocked she covers her mouth. Maguk says that Scum always try to attack him whenever he's looking elsewhere. She says that she would love to hire him, begging that he helps her. He says that now that the situation is different, he costs a lot more. She tells him that it will be fine, and for him, no matter how expensive he is, they will definitely be able to pay for him, begging that he will save her father. He smiles and tells him that they are okay. Then it jumps to some fat pig laughing. He says that they finally caught the two of them, and the big plan they've prepared for the last 10 years has succeeded. But then he's surprised by something that is none other than Maguk coming out and asking where Kwan is. Maguk says that everybody except him has died. The dude is surprised, asking who killed Kwan. He says a mysterious martial master that's young and handsome. The dude asks why he's calling him young and handsome, and why the hell he's praising his enemy. The man stares at Maguk, and then he realizes that he's talking about himself, and he says he can't believe he's doing a self-glaze right now. He says that he's got a good eye for people, and all of the men start to surround him immediately. The man says that if he had saved the woman and child, he should have run far away, and instead, he came right back into the tiger's den. Maguk laughs, asking where the tiger is meant to be, because all he sees are fucking dogs that bit their master and raised them. Seian looks scared, and the man doesn't actually know what to make of this yet. He killed Kwan, and instead of running away, he came to the enemy base by himself. He's also really confident, despite being surrounded, so he's definitely not ordinary. He puts his hands together respectfully, asking who he is, saying he would like to go in and drink, and even though they're meeting in such circumstances, he'll treat him to a good liquor. Maguk tells him he's known to be polite, but he won't even be easy on him if he acts kind, and that he can curse and swear at him all he wants. The man realizes that kiss-assing isn't the move, and yells, telling his men to kill him. They all start running towards him. Maguk decides it's time, and tightens the grip on his blade. And in an instant, he dashes forward, leaving an afterimage, slicing one of the dudes straight through the middle. They realize he's way too fast, but can't do anything as he cuts the dude's head off. Maguk then swaps positioning, readying his blade, cutting another dude's head clean off. He continues his devastating footwork, using the 4 strides of the wind god to dismember these dudes one after the other, not even giving them a chance to retaliate. Seian still covers her daughter's eyes, and the lard ass is terrified, because now he realizes they messed with the wrong dude. He looks at Maguk standing above all of his men's corpses, and asks him who on earth he is. Maguk says he's nobody, and he's just a hired swordsman, who smelled an opportunity to earn some money. Lard ass says he has enough to change a person's life, just asking him how much he wants. Maguk asks why he would do such a thing when he already has money, and that if he wants to change his life, he should have used his own money, asking why he stole someone else's, especially his own master's. The guy starts to bite his lip, and we hear a man saying to throw down your sword. Lardass turns around surprised, and we see that Asu is now being held hostage by some other ugly bastard. Seian yells out, calling out to her father, and Lardass starts to smile, telling him to throw his sword down, otherwise the Golden Manor Master will die. Maguk swings his blade upwards, which surprises him because nothing happens, only for a shockwave to immediately follow, destroying the ground all the way towards the man holding Asu hostage. Again, there's nothing that happens immediately, and they're surprised wondering what that was. He is dead, he just doesn't know it yet.
Money!
As Maguk used the soaring sword art, 4th form, the flaming heavens, Lardass starts to scream, and Maguk looks at him again, a bit disappointed, asking him what he was saying. Lardass takes an instinctive step backward, looking terrified, and puts his hands up, telling Maguk to wait. Maguk says he doesn't care if he wants him to wait, and that he should fight back if he wants an honorable death. Lardass starts sweating nervously, realizing that since he used a powerful sword aura, he must be almost out of energy. He draws his blade, saying in that case, he'll swing first, then take advantage of this time. Maguk easily blocks his sword, but it's still powerful enough to make his hands bleed from the grip. He swings it to the side, deflecting it toward the ground. Lardass says he's going to gather all of his energy and end it now. He takes a deep breath and starts to swing, and Maguk uses his sword to block it. He then screams, coming in for another one, this time destroying the ground beneath him. Lardass might actually have some real power behind him. As he continues wailing on Maguk, he smiles, getting confident, asking if he's really out of energy. His hand should be full, blocking his attacks. If he pushes a little more, that's all he needs. But of course, he was at fault for thinking this, as he feels a sharp pain in his chest. Looking down at the blade, Maguk calls him pathetic. He says he should have spent his life training, instead of indulging in his greed, and that he, the head of the bodyguard household that was supposed to protect the Golden Manor, shouldn't have lived like this. And that him dying like this is fitting for a pig. He then pulls the blade out, and tells him that he should be a merchant in his next life. Ah-Su thanks him, saying that he will never forget his help in this, and that he is the benefactor of their family that saved them all from ruin, asking for his name. Maguk tells him that he is just a mere vagrant passing by. Ah-Su laughs, saying that even the vagrant king wouldn't be able to defeat them all so easily. Maguk says he is flattering him, and Sayin says she made him a promise that she would give him money as a reward. Ah-Su says that she did great, and that's one promise they'll be able to keep. If all he needs is money, then he's come to the right place. Maguk smiles, saying that's the exact reason he did this in the first place. Ah-Su says that since he saved their lives, they ought to give him everything they have, but that would be too hard to do in reality. Maguk says he never asked for something so grand, and Ah-Su says that while it would be good to determine an amount to give him, he should just take as much as he can carry out. Maguk wonders if that's really what he wants to do, and Ah-Su says in return he can't use any carts or get help from others, but he can use his own inner energy. Maguk tells him he's going to be able to carry quite a lot, though, and Ah-Su says they would have been dead if it weren't for him, and he should at least do this much for him. Maguk is glad that his hard work paid off, and thanks the man for allowing this opportunity. Ah-Su then opens the gate, and when it swings open, Maguk starts to take his first step, slowly entering the darkness until he's no longer visible. Sayin and her father watch, and Sayin says that with his level of martial arts, he'll be able to take out much more than he might imagine, asking if that's okay. Ah-Su asks if there's anything inside that could be more precious than him protecting them today, and to him, just having her and his granddaughter alive is all he needed. She looks so happy that her father cares for her so much, and she says that man isn't an ordinary person. Sayin says that he's hiding it, but he's definitely exceptionally skilled despite looking so young. Ah-Su says he's not talking about his skills alone, and there's something about him that he can't express with words alone, and he's met countless people so far. Even he has never met someone so young, confident, and with such a unique air around him. They can always earn money again, but they might never be able to build a connection to someone like him ever again in their lives, which makes it fine even if he takes a lot. The more he takes, the deeper a connection they'll build. Sayin realizes he's right and looks over to the side, wondering what exactly he's going to come out with. But it then jumps to Maguk walking forward, back in front of the Heavenly Demon Pavilion, and he says that he sold the gold and treasures that he took in different places. There was too much for a single shop to buy, so he went to different places every time he arrived in a city to sell the jewels. Bro really came out with a mountain of gold, and that was how he earned 38 million yong. This money will become the cornerstone of the squad that will be directly under his command. He heads into his father's throne room, and we see him and Myung on the far side. They exchange glances towards him, and Maguk says that his father receives reports from Myung in this place several times a day, and makes important decisions. Depending on those decisions, some would live, and some would die, and he wonders if his father is satisfied with his life. Then maybe, just like him and Leon, his father wants to give away the position of Heavenly Demon and live a normal life. His father speaks up first, saying that he heard he went outside, and Maguk says yes, he went to go earn some money. His father looks a bit confused, asking why he needs money, and Maguk says he can't keep using his, and he'll need much funding going forward. His father asks how he plans to spend it, and Maguk says he's going to create his own private group. This is a surprise to both him and Myung, and they ask what he means. He says that each of the demon supremes take in their own subordinates, and in order to deal with them, he also needs his own. His father tells him that cannot happen. If he creates one, then his brother will also want two, and their family and cultists will become divided, and he forbids it. Maguk was expecting resistance on this, and knew it wouldn't be approved at once. So, Maguk pulls something out of his robe, saying this is for his father. Myung and his father wonder what it is, and his father lifts his hand up, using some Jedi mind tricks to pull it over. He then opens it, asking what this money is meant to be, and Muguk tells him that it's his allowance for him. His father immediately starts to give off a very serious expression, and yells at him. Muguk smiles, and Myung looks a bit nervous, and we see his father debating on how to feel, and tells him that he actually already has immense wealth. Muguk says he knows he's the richest in the world, and what he gave him is the first allowance as his son to thank him for giving birth and raising him. It's hard to tell what his father is thinking, but Muguk tells him he wanted to do this at least once, and tells his father to rest well, and starts to walk away. He looks back down at it, and Myung looks over at him, and now it's easy to tell that he is genuinely happy to have a son such as Muguk. Myung can't believe he's making such an expression. It jumps to the Nirvana Pavilion, and we see Muguk and Leon standing inside. She looks over, hearing somebody, and we hear Darion say it's time, calling out to Muguk as the pavilion master, and he tells him that everybody is waiting on them. Muguk smiles, saying that he's glad he's here. Darion tells him that he volunteered. Muguk says he bet he never expected them to meet like this again. And Darion says that honestly, he was very surprised. They both smile at each other because they're both trusted comrades. Muguk says it's time to go, and he starts to walk out, and Leon turns, following him as well. Darion still smiles and walks with them as they start to head outside. They open the doors to the pavilion, and we see all of the inspector squad staring at them. They look up towards Muguk and immediately hit a respectful greeting, calling out to the pavilion master. Muguk is glad that they're being so welcoming, saying that they're friendlier than he thought they would be, and he asks Darion if he told them their salaries would be reduced if they didn't welcome him. He says no, and Muguk asks why the atmosphere is so nice. He says because of what he's shown them. Because of the investigation incident against the demonic army commander. In that situation, where they had injuries on their side, he took care of the injured investigators by getting the demonic physician to look at them and avenging them by killing the one who hurt them. Darion tells him to go ahead and give them a warm welcome. Muguk looks out, wondering what to say, because to his left are groups of people, and to his right, he makes eye contact with most of them. He says that he doesn't even know whether they'll become happy or miserable now that he's the pavilion master. But he is certain of one thing, and that is their hearts will run faster than they did before. Darion is surprised that he's going with this approach, but we see that the general consensus is that he's a pretty good leader, and they start roaring, low-key shaking the palace because they're so excited. Muguk says the atmosphere was so good, but now he's been given so much work they're trying to kill him. Darion says this is the incident that was handled unfairly, which he requested to see. Muguk asks if this is related to Chinpa again, and Darion says he doesn't want to do this, but this happened recently and coincides with his request. Leon says that the sword demon was already about to explode last time, and he needs to hold himself back. Muguk says the stories written here are way too unfair, and they won't be able to cover it up just because he was about to explode. And she should try her best to read them and cover the ones she thinks she can. She sighs and says he's definitely going to have to do something about it. It jumps to the entertainment pavilion, and a man slams his cup on his table and lets out a long sigh. Some guy walks up and tells him to stop drinking, seeing that he knows the situation, but bro is wasted off his ass right now. The dude asks how he's meant to stop drinking in this situation because the scumbag that put his child into a coma for 10 days was acquitted as innocent. The dude is surprised and says he knows what he's saying, but he heard that the Nirvana Pavilion was investigating it. The dude takes another sip, saying that the Nirvana Pavilion investigator said his child was sparring with his friend and got injured. The innkeeper asks how he could do that, and the dude slams his table once more, saying he heard that the father of the child who led the attack on his son was none other than the 100th sword demon. He is a subordinate of Chinpa and is the leader of all the other sword demons. The dude is surprised by this and continues, saying that the Nirvana Pavilion investigator is the same kind of person. The dude tells him to lower his voice, saying he doesn't want anybody to hear him. He says let them, he doesn't care, and that they're all assholes. He wants any one of the people he's shit talking to come kill him. The dude tells him that in times like this, he needs to remain strong. The dude says if his son can't wake up, his wife won't be able to live either. And then he's just gonna have to go and kill that bastard all by himself. His tears start rolling down his face. Somebody asks if he really thinks he can kill him, and they turn surprised as we see somebody we've never met before standing before them. The guy asks who he is, and the dude asks why he's going around saying that he's gonna kill someone else's precious son. Now, he realizes this is the one who put his son in a coma, and he tells him to give him his life back, as they still haven't heard a single apology from him. He bows his head, saying that he's really sorry for committing such a heinous crime. It'll never happen again. It's an actual bow as well. The dude asks if this is good enough, saying that he shouldn't say he never apologized again. The father is surprised, and the other two dudes look so smug. The father grits his teeth, calling him a bastard, while gripping onto his sword. But of course, since he's not an actual warrior, the son of the 100th sword demon comes in with his fist raised, hitting him straight in the nose, sending him flying. He says they all saw this, and he pulled his sword first. His friends say yes, and they are his witnesses. He then starts smashing this dude's face in, saying that a mere storage keeper dares to report him to the Nirvana Pavilion. That they asked him to steal money from home, but he said he wouldn't do it because he earned it with his blood and sweat. That idiot acted all kind and made him out to be some sort of trash. That'd make him angry enough to hit him. The dude says that he just confessed with his own mouth, and the guy freezes up again, asking what he means by confession. The storage keeper says that everyone here heard it. The reason why he beat up his son, and he just confessed that it wasn't a spar, and he attacked him. He realizes that he's right and starts glaring around the room, intimidating them, asking if anybody heard him say it. They all turn away, of course, just completely ignoring him and remaining silent. He looks content with himself and then starts smirking, telling the storage keeper that nobody heard him though. He begins laughing very loudly, and the storage keeper realizes that this world is too damn corrupt and starts to scream out of frustration that nobody is on his side. The dude says that he's crying just like his son did, and he guesses the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Even his friends start laughing. And then we hear Muguk say he heard it. They all turn, looking towards him, as Muguk slowly enters the room. They are cooked. The 100 sword demon's son turns, asking who the hell said that, only to see Muguk. Muguk says that he doesn't even know who said it yet he dares speak so rudely. And he can just imagine how he grew up as a child. They realize they might have made a mistake, and he and his friends look nervous. He then immediately apologizes, saying he's being too emotional, and hopefully he's not too angry. And then says he was just kidding, asking if he really thought that he'd say that shit. And he doesn't know who he is, but he must have a death wish since he decided to butt in here when he's not needed. Muguk looks a bit annoyed and smiles, saying that just being the son of the 100 sword demon allows him to act so tyrannically in broad daylight, and that must mean that the 100 sword demon's reputation is really powerful here. The dude asks if he's really trying to belittle him for just being his son, and the storage keeper calls him the second young master. They're all surprised, and so is everybody else. And they wonder what the second young master is doing here in a place like this. But he now realizes he's in hot shit. And Muguk tells them to relax, saying that he's here today as the Nirvana Pavilion master. And Leon says surely that would make him more nervous. Muguk asks if that's the case, and he apologizes for not recognizing who he was, saying that it seems like he's committed great disrespect because he's too young, begging that he forgive him. He's not really paying attention to the second young master. Muguk says he doesn't seem to be that young from his behavior, and he says that he is still very ignorant. Muguk says that the kid is very shrewd. He knows exactly when he needs to bow down to others. The dude says he's gonna take his leave, and Muguk tells him to wait, as he came here because he has business with him. He starts to sweat nervously, asking what he means. And of course, we know Muguk's here to play around, and he says he's here to investigate the assault incidents he has committed. He says that the pavilion already judged that he was innocent. Muguk says they did, but he's going to reinvestigate the entire case. Since he extorted money every day, that'd be habitual extortion. And since he asked him to steal money, that'd be the instigation of stealing. Since he assaulted his friend to the brink of death, he's low-key pretty much a murderer. On top of all that, he looked for the victim's father and assaulted him too, and the crimes he's committed are far too heinous, and he'll need to be in prison for at least 20 years. Bro sweats nervously after hearing 20 years. And he says that wasn't an assault, and they were sparring. Muguk asks if he's forgotten that he just confessed moments ago to him, the Nirvana Pavilion master, and that he heard him say every one of those things. He says his father will not stand by letting anyone accuse him, and Muguk says not to worry about that. Since his father will be busy, he won't have time to look after him. Yes, he also intends to arrest his father in this case for conspiring with a Nirvana Pavilion investigator. He asks if he thinks his father will just let him be. After he comes out of jail, he'll definitely seek revenge against him, and rather, he might even try to kill him while he's in jail. Muguk then takes away the kid's speaking privileges by hitting him straight in the gut. And his eyes start to water, and snot starts to pour out of his nose. He falls to the floor, coughing. On the floor, Muguk asks if he knows that he just threatened the Nirvana Pavilion master. And now his sentence has increased to 30 years. He looks up, crying, begging that he forgive him, of course. Muguk looks firm in his decision, and he says that he should just give him one reason why he should forgive him. The kid starts thinking about it, and Muguk asks if he sparred with anyone before or helped anyone do anything. And he wants to know the kindest thing that he's done, and even if it sounds far-fetched and made up, he'll hear it out. The kid realizes that he's right, and he has not done a single thing. Muguk says that he can't even make it up, and ever since he was born, he's been nothing but an asshole, asking why he should forgive someone like this. The kid tells him he's gonna be nice from now on, and Muguk slaps the piss out of the kid, to the point that it looks like his eardrums burst, and he even spits out a tooth. Everybody looks horrified, and Muguk says that he can live that way after he comes out of jail then. Even the storage keeper looks surprised, and Muguk repeats that he can live that way after he comes out of jail then. And looks over towards his friends. They say they only did as they were told and to let them go. He says if they don't tell him everything he wants, they will definitely become his scapegoat. And they both say they ain't about that life, and they'll snitch. Muguk orders Darion to take them to the pavilion. He says yes, sir, and his men take them all away. The storage keeper looks like he's in disbelief, and Muguk says if anything happens ever again, to please report to the Nirvana Pavilion. As long as he is the master, no amount of external influence will work on him. They're all just surprised that somebody's actually starting to stand on business around here. And he says if anyone dares to call their father here like this brat to intimidate others, he will also call for his father. They're surprised, because who's going to be able to stand up against the cult leader? Somebody begins to chuckle, and then that turns into full-blown laughter. And Leon tells the storage keeper that the demonic physician has taken a look at his son before they came here under the orders of the second young master. He asks what he means, and if that's really true, that somebody so important looked at his son. Muguk smiles warmly at the guy, saying that his son is more important, and he saw him wake up before he came here, so he should go see him now too. His eyes immediately fill with nothing but respect and admiration, but also relief as he starts crying tears of happiness. He immediately starts bowing, thanking Muguk for all the kindness he's shown him so far. And Muguk says that he's already devoted his entire life to their cult, and it's natural for him to protect someone, because they are the backbone of their cult. The storage keeper raises his hands up, grabbing onto Muguk's, and thanks him from the actual bottom of his heart. What a W father. Leon and Darion both also look happy at this, and even the waiter dude is tearing up. And Muguk smiles warmly, saying rather, he should be thanking him on behalf of the cult in the first place, and they need more people like him. Back at the pavilion, Muguk's looking out, confused, as we see everybody looking at him with very stern expressions. He says that he thought the first to show opposition would be the Blood Heaven Sword Demon or one of the Sword Demons, but unexpectedly, it came from within the pavilion. One of the special investigators, specifically the most senior one named Gok Myung, says that Muguk should have gone to look for him at his office, but there were too many people, so he asks him to pardon his manners. Muguk asks whether they all came to look for him, and he says that he heard that he's going to reopen an investigation that was already ruled as innocent. Muguk says he did, and Gok Myung says they worry that by doing that, he'll crush the morale and authority that the investigators have. Muguk looks around, asking the rest if they agree, and they say that they do. And he says that he does not. In fact, he thinks that the Yang Ho incident is what destroys their pavilion's authority in a very severe manner. Gok Myung asks what he means, and Muguk asks if they heard about how Yang Ho confessed his crimes to everyone else when he arrested him. Yang Ho was that guy's son. Gok Myung says he did, and Muguk asks, if he did, why the hell is he here? Gokmyung says that what they are talking about now is the reopening of an investigation that has been closed. Muguk asks if this is a matter of principles, and Gokmyung says yes, and that this has never happened before. Muguk then calls out to him, saying that an innocent child was beaten half to death, and they've gotten the confession from the culprit himself, saying that warrants a re-investigation. He asks how he thinks he looks right now, trying to stick to his principles. Gokmyung says it can't be helped, even if he sounds old-fashioned, as holding up principles in an organization is that important after all. Muguk sighs, saying that he wants to hear what everybody thinks, those who think the re-investigation is correct, to please come over to his side. Everybody looks around nervously, and only one person steps up. Muguk glances over, and it's Darion, saying that he thinks that this is required. Muguk asks for his reason, and he says the investigation was not a satisfactory one. The rest stare at him, and he says that they also can't deny the possibility that there could have been external influence involved. Muguk says that's great, asking what anyone else thinks. Someone else says that he agrees as well, and he steps up, introducing himself as Iho, and he says he wasn't able to thank him back then, and he's so thankful for his help. This is the guy who got bodied before. Muguk asks how his injuries are, and he says he's fine. Muguk says that's good to hear, but the rest still look troubled, and Muguk glances at them, calling out specifically to investigator Manhwa. He says that he's the investigator that was in charge of this incident, asking what he thinks. He says that he investigated it thoroughly. Muguk thinks for a second and asks if he received any bribes. The guy panics, and Gokmyung asks how he could say such a thing. Muguk then starts to release his aura and killing intent, and he tells him to stop speaking without his permission. Damn. The rest look worried, and Muguk glares at him, saying that he wants Manhwa to speak up, asking if he received money from the 100-sword demon. He says he swears upon his life that he did not, and if he doesn't believe him, he can investigate him. Muguk smiles, saying that he already did, and he really didn't take any money. They're all surprised, and Gokmyung asks if this means he conducted an internal investigation on the investigators. Unless this was a special investigation, this is not permitted. Muguk says this was done as one, and he received direct orders from the cult leader to do so. Gokmyung starts to sweat nervously, since it was direct orders, and Muguk says he's curious, asking why he covered up this investigation if he didn't take any money. Manhwa says he didn't cover it up based on his own will. Muguk asks if he was threatened with the safety of his sister, which surprises him. And he says that based on the results of the investigation on him, he's incorruptible to the extent that it's hard to find anyone like him. Muguk didn't believe the results and looked into him himself, because he didn't believe there'd be anyone in the world who'd hate money, but surprisingly, he truly was as incorruptible as reported. Manhwa is surprised, and Muguk asks why someone that clean would do such a shitty job investigating this and covering it up. And then he figured out his big weakness, his sister, who was his only family member. Gokmyung asks if he was really threatened, and he sits there in silence. Gokmyung tells him to speak up, asking if he was threatened. Muguk says that he knows why Gokmyung took the lead and gathered everyone for this incident. Manhwa is a junior that Gokmyung really cares for. He only stepped forward so he could help make sure that Manhwa, who was the lead investigator, wouldn't have any blemishes on his record. Muguk tells him not to worry about his sister, as he already sent warriors to protect her. Until the incident is over, his sister will be safe. They look surprised, and Manhwa asks if he's serious. Muguk says of course, and the dude's eyes immediately fill with tears, and he says that he's committed a grave offense. He falls to his knees. Gokmyung asks if he really did this, and Muguk says that he should know that he shouldn't have done that, even though he was threatened. Manhwa says yes, and he'll gladly accept any punishment that is given. The rest look at him with worry for one of their comrades, and Muguk tells him to get up. He says that if this had happened after he became the pavilion master, he wouldn't have forgiven him, but since it happened before he came, he'll make an exception this one time. Manhwa is surprised and asks if he truly will forgive him. Muguk says yes, telling him to bear this in mind. He says that he's the one who forgave him, and the incorruptible life he's lived is the reason that he's done so. But now, that life no longer exists due to this incident, and he wants him to start again and go back to being incorruptible. Manhwa starts crying even harder and thanks him over and over, while the rest watch, realizing now how kind Muguk actually is. Muguk then yells, telling them to listen to this. Now that he is the pavilion master, he's going to think of their families as his own. If anyone dares to mess with his family, he will personally crush them. From now on, their pavilion will not allow themselves to be swayed by external influence. In return, he promises he shall not allow anyone to get away with messing with them, just as he has this time. And if they receive a threat and tell him about it, he will protect their family. Asking them if he does not look trustworthy, saying that if they don't think he is, then they should go trust the cult leader instead. He says that even if he has to beg his father for help, he will make sure to get it. So if anyone dares to try and exert influence on them from the outside, they must report it to him. The work that they do here, he needs to make sure they can do it with their heads held high. They're all surprised by his words, and he smiles at them warmly, showing that he is genuine. Muguk says that when everybody's family is safe and sound, that's when the pavilion will run as he wants it to. No matter who it is, if they dare commit a crime, then he believes they should be punished. Even if someone in their pavilion commits one, he won't let it slide. Even if the culprit was his father himself, he will hold him responsible. They're all surprised by this, and he says that what he's afraid of is not the cult leader or the 8 demon supremes. What he fears is that the Nirvana pavilion will become useless. They won't be able to protect those they're supposed to protect, and those who are supposed to be punished will walk away scot-free, smiling, while they remain powerless to stop it. A woman speaks up, saying that she knows she is late in saying this, but she wishes to follow the wishes of the pavilion master. They all turn back towards her. Darion even starts blushing at her. We learn that her name is Jo Hyung. She starts to walk forward, and the rest wonder what she's going to do. But then, they nod in agreement, realizing that she's right, and they start to stand beside her. We now see her standing with Darion, as the rest all walk over as well. We see now that only Gokmyung remains on the other side, surprised. Muguk tells him that if he wants to turn his resolve into reality, then he'll need his experience and assistance, asking if he'd like to help him. Gokmyung feels touched, looking into Muguk's warm eyes. He thanks him for giving them this opportunity, and we see that his hands are even shaking. Muguk can tell that he's nervous and puts his hands over them, comforting him. Then, he tells Darion to go and arrest the 100-sword demon, Yang Tae, the father of Yang Ho. Gokmyung says that he won't just let himself get arrested, as he has the 100-sword demons under him. Muguk says he should do as he pleases, and if he doesn't come, then he'll charge him with mutiny. The rest are surprised but go do it anyway. It then jumps to Yang Tae, sitting in front of Muguk, calling out to him, "Second young master." Muguk corrects him, saying that he needs to address him as the Nirvana Pavilion master while they are here. Yang Tae realizes he's right and corrects himself. He then mentions that in the summons, there was mention of a mutiny charge, asking what it means. Muguk says that was the only way he thought he'd be able to see him. Yang Tae realizes he's right and apologizes for not immediately complying with the arrest, as he knows there are many things to consider in an organization, and he has pride in front of his subordinates. Muguk says he understands, and this case wasn't meant to blow out of proportion initially. It all happened while kids were playing with one another, and that could happen. Yang Tae smiles, saying that he knew Muguk would understand, and he'll need external help eventually as he continues to run the pavilion. He'll also need a lot of funds. Muguk says he can't believe he's beating around the bush and that he wants to bribe him. Yang Tae tells him that's not all. If he wants to become the official successor in the future, he'll definitely need his help too. Right now, everybody is supporting the first young master. Muguk says he'd be really appreciative if they helped him, and Yang Tae says that as expected, he's truly magnanimous, and he'll be sure to serve him well from now on. He'll also host a great meal for him soon. Muguk asks where he's going, and Yang Tae says that he thought they were done talking already. Muguk says that when he said he would help him, he meant after he got out of jail. Yang Tae looks confused by this, telling him to stop making such bad jokes. Muguk asks if it sounds like he's joking, saying that they're talking about him threatening to kill a family member of a Nirvana Pavilion investigator. Yang Tae says that he's certain he already said that he never made such a threat. Muguk doesn't seem persuaded, saying that he doesn't care about what he said, because he received the testimony of the investigator that was threatened. The rules of their cult determine that testimonies about warriors of the Nirvana Pavilion have a higher weight compared to anyone else. That's a clause made to protect the authority of the investigators. He probably wouldn't know, since Muguk only just recently learned of it too. And this is because of people like himself. There are many others who think they can just talk their way out of this as well. Yang Tae sits in silence, and Muguk tells him that if he confesses now, he'll reduce his sentence by 10 years. But if he doesn't confess, he'll receive a 20-year sentence. That's where the negotiations end. Yang Tae asks if he's gone insane, and Muguk tells him that if he has to be crazy, he'll gladly do it. He thinks it'd be hard to deal with people like him while being sane anyway, and he'll give him a few minutes to think. Yang Tae asks why he's doing this, and Muguk asks if he's really wondering why. He tells him that it's because his son almost beat his own friend to death, and it wasn't just over one single fight. He bullied him every day for years, while he, as his father, threatened to kill an investigator's family member to cover up his son's crime. Yet, he dares to ask him why he would do this? Yang Tae asks how a mere storage guard could be weighed the same as them, saying that they are his superiors. The Nirvana Pavilion has always turned a blind eye to matters like this, until now. Muguk stares at him, looking disappointed, saying those are upsetting and frightening words. Yang Tae asks what he means, and Muguk tells him that will no longer be the case. Yang Tae sweats nervously, saying that the Demon Supreme will not stand idly by if he interferes with him. Muguk says he will do nothing, just as he did nothing when he cut down the demonic army commander, so why would he do anything for him? Yang Tae then smashes the table out of pure frustration, telling him to look and listen. Muguk asks if he's trying to threaten to kill his family too, and Yang Tae realizes that he can't do that because Muguk's father is the cult leader. Muguk then sits up, saying that he only has a few minutes left, and that he should confess his crimes. As he walks away, we hear Yang Tae screaming. Muguk thinks that maybe the reason the demonic cult fell wasn't because of Mogi. A mere 100-sword demon has already dared to threaten a pavilion investigator, and the order within the cult has fallen to the point where he would even dare threaten him. And he wonders if the fall was solely because of Mogi in the end, or if it came from the inside. He makes his way into a courtyard and looks up, surprised. What he sees in front of him is none other than Chunpa, having a drink in the courtyard. Muguk stands there, staring at him. Chunpa raises his glass in the air, toasting him, and then starts chugging it. He calls out to Muguk, asking if he would rather be called the second young master or the Nirvana Pavilion master. Muguk wonders what he wants. Chunpa tells him to come have a drink, and Muguk, low-key, looks a bit suspicious. He walks forward and takes a seat beside him. Chunpa says that he warned him, nothing good comes out of meeting him often. Muguk says that he's the one who keeps looking for him, though. Chunpa glares at him, but Muguk meets his gaze without flinching. Chunpa takes a sip, saying that recently, he felt something new to him. When he made a wish to call the cult leader after winning the fight, he shouted in his mind, "This is it." He says, if someone is smart, they should make that sort of wish. Muguk says he agrees, and that he made a pretty good wish too. Chunpa says, exactly. It all started from that day. He pours Muguk a drink, saying that he started to make his blade cry. Muguk asks how it could be crying because of him, saying it's more likely lamenting. Chunpa asks what he means, and Muguk says that his disciple used the energy-dissipating poison on him during their fight. Then, his other disciple came to find him and shamed his subordinate. His brother used the demonic army for personal gain, and his subordinate threatened to kill a Nirvana Pavilion investigator's family. So, of course, his blade would cry. It laments that those around him don't hold his standards. Chunpa smiles, saying that he sure does have a way with words, but what he said is wrong. He continues drinking, and Muguk tells him to explain why. Chunpa says that firstly, Muguk said that those around him don't match up to his standards, but there are people who are perfect for him, because that's all he amounts to as well. Muguk wonders what this means, saying that Chunpa sure is a weird person to understand. He thinks he's easier to deal with when he's full of pride and chasing after fame, but he doesn't seem to want to do that at all. Chunpa tells him to release Yang Tae, saying that the morale of his people has dropped to an all-time low because of him. Muguk says that he'll release him if he's found innocent after the investigation. Chunpa starts to release his killing intent and fiery aura, which explodes out and starts to engulf Muguk, who looks strained. Muguk thinks, the level of demonic energy he has is indeed on a whole different level. I understand why my father says the time isn't right yet. Chunpa says that he would like to give Muguk some advice, but Muguk cuts him off, telling him to stop. Chunpa, surprised, asks what he means. Maguk tells him that if he's here to ask a favor, he should just do that, he doesn't need to give advice while doing it. Chunpa grits his teeth, releasing more of his aura. Then, he just stares at him, before looking back down at his drink. He mutters, "You're right. It's rare for someone to speak so straightforwardly to me." Maguk says that he better be on guard, stagnant water is bound to rot. Chunpa looks down at his reflection, saying that no one stays stagnant because they want to. After staying in the water for a while, they start to like it and lose opportunities to get out of it. Maguk tells him that this is why he shouldn't put himself in rotten waters, and he should take this chance to let out the rotten water, because he's not someone worthy of his protection. Chunpa finishes his drink, asking if Maguk will accept one from him or not. Maguk looks at the glass as Chunpa pours him one. He says that he'll do as he says and let out the rotten water. Maguk says, that's the right decision. Then, Chunpa says that in turn, he wants him to become his water. Maguk is caught off guard, wondering what exactly he means, asking if it's what he thinks it is. He tells Maguk that if he drinks that liquor, it'll show he intends to become the heavenly demon, and Chunpa will become his backer. Maguk is surprised, saying that he never thought Chunpa would say something like that. Everyone knows that he supports his older brother, yet he wants to abandon him and choose Maguk now. Maguk brings it up, saying, I thought you were already supporting my brother. Chunpa says, that was because I didn't know you were this crazy back then. Maguk says he's out of his mind, calling him someone who will sell anyone out for the sake of his ambitions. I killed your brother, crippled your disciple, and imprisoned your subordinate. Yet, despite all that, you propose to become my backer? Maguk flat out tells him that he killed his brother. Chunpa doesn't look fazed, shrugging his shoulders. Once they're out of their parents' embrace, they're all strangers. And you expect me to suffer just because my kin died? That's ridiculous. The thorns under your own fingernails are the ones that hurt the most. It's not like I officially decided to work with your brother, and even if I did, I could always change my mind. Maguk thinks, if I have him on my side, that would mean I have a whole army behind me. But why would he choose me now? Chunpa says that seeing the madness Maguk has created and how he is bulldozing everything fearlessly, he thinks he can bet his fate on him. Maguk asks if he really likes him just because he's crazy. Chunpa laughs, saying yes, he's going to devour that madness of his whole. Maguk is starting to understand him a bit more. He thinks, if I were younger, I might have completely trusted his words purely because they were flattering. However, he knows the dirty tricks old men play just to make use of younger men. Maguk asks if he intends to become the heavenly demon. He looks down at his reflection from his past life, thinking, he's trying to make it sound like if I work with him, I will become the heavenly demon. Maguk sets the glass down, saying that while he's thankful Chunpa thinks highly of him, it's time for him to do what's been entrusted to him. Chunpa looks down at the cup, and Maguk asks what he thinks his father would say. Maguk says that he would just say he's shirking work and playing politics when he's been entrusted with an important role. Chunpa asks what he thinks would happen if he performs well as the pavilion master. If the cult intends to keep him as the master, he would rot there forever. There's only one path he can choose right now, and that is whether he would rather live as the pavilion master or as the heir of the cult. Maguk says he's not wrong, but there's something he's overlooked, the will to set the hierarchy straight in their cult. And it's not something Maguk alone wants, but what his father wishes for as well. He asks Chunpa to give him some time to think, saying that once this liquor is drunk, he'll decide. Chunpa glares at him, then says that's okay with him, it's a normal thing to do. He grabs his blade, saying that if Maguk had just drunk it like a fool because he asked, that wouldn't do, bro's blade is heavy. Chunpa swings his blade with full force directly towards Maguk's throat. Sparks fly as it collides with something. Maguk has blocked the attack with his blade. Chunpa tells him he will hear his answer tomorrow. Maguk says he'll tell him in 5 days. Chunpa's eyes turn bloodshot, asking if he really has to wait that long, before dashing off before he does something he might regret. Maguk sheathes his blade, saying, that actually hurt like hell. It then jumps to some people grunting as we see their knuckles are bleeding. It is Jang Ho training some other people, and maybe that is Gok Myung, that bald dude. As Jang Ho yells at them, asking if they're going to fall already, and if this isn't normal training, and if the pavilion enforcement warriors are incapable of completing this, then how can they complete their missions? He tells them they need to hang in there, and their wife, children, Friends, or anyone else might betray them, but the sweat they have right now will not. Darion says from what he knows, Jang Ho isn't married, and it's funny to hear him mentioning wife and children. Muguk smiles, saying that's true. Darion asks how he did it. Muguk asks what he means, and he says he's talking about getting the Southern Blade House to publish their apology statement officially. He can't believe they actually admitted to wrongdoing and apologized, and that this is unprecedented. Muguk says he can go and ask himself if he's curious. Darion tells him that he shouldn't even say that, even if he meant it as a joke, because if he goes to the Southern Blade House right now, he might get his legs broken there. Muguk says no, even if he dances in the training ground right now, he'll still come out in one piece, and it is real, only for the time being, though. Darion's confused, wondering what that means, and Muguk thinks about how Chunpa is awaiting his reply. He then says that he's curious about Yang Tae and his son. Darion asks what he's curious about. Muguk says that they need to be sent to a prison where it's the hardest for them to be contacted, and they ought to take full responsibility for what they've done. Darion says he understands, and Muguk walks off, saying if he had not intervened, then they would have done however they pleased for the rest of their lives, while Guoksu, the storage keeper, and his whole family were victims, and they would have lived a horrible life. Because of people like Yang Tae, there would be other victims before Guoksu, whom he doesn't know about, and more victims like him would continue to appear, and he won't let people like that wreak havoc. It jumps to the demonic village, and we see some people surprised by something, as there is a Nirvana pavilion sign being put up in front of a building, and they wonder if it's one of their branches. Muguk appears, saying that indeed, so if any of their cult warriors abuse their authority, they should go there and report them. The citizens look tired, also I think this is the guy from the inn before. Muguk asks what they usually did if the warriors were abusing their authority. They themselves don't know what they do. Muguk can tell this is a group of people who have been constantly abused, and he says they probably just took it and stayed quiet. Even those who knew that it had to be reported to the pavilion couldn't do it either. Before they even got to the pavilion, they had to declare their reasons for visiting at the main gate. Not only was there an identification check, but also a body search. They actually had to go through that same process multiple times before arriving at the pavilion itself. Muguk says for any matters related to their cult warriors, to please report them to the branch this time around. They're surprised, asking if he really means that, and he says indeed, and he hopes they can spread this word to everybody, and to tell the rest of the villagers that they can report to this branch if they experience any injustice. Muguk says that they won't have to worry about any retaliation, as those who dare to retaliate against people who made a report for a Nirvana Pavilion investigation to take place will be executed. The guy is surprised, asking if the second young master is really doing this for their sake, and he says that he'll tell everybody about this. Muguk smiles and heads out under a tree, saying that this is where it will all start. With the Nirvana Pavilion in the center, they'll start to protect the villagers, the low-ranked warriors, and those who suffer injustice because they're weak. They'll be teaching everyone an important principle by doing that. And everybody's life is worth the same to him, and he'll move forward with this principle. He starts walking back into his home, and as soon as he walks into his courtyard, he sees something ahead of him, which is none other than Chunpa, leaning over his sword, asking if he's ready to take his drink. Muguk takes a seat, saying that he is, and Chunpa raises his glass and starts pouring it into the little cup. He and Muguk stare at each other for a moment. And I guess the cup's trying to symbolize that they are two different waves colliding. Chunpa tells him to drink it, and Muguk looks him dead in the eye, saying that he needs some snacks first. Chunpa looks a bit annoyed, asking what he means, and Muguk says the demonic army. Chunpa's surprised, and Muguk says that he wants him to put the demonic army in his mouth. Chunpa sits there in silence and starts to look a little frustrated, saying that's not how things work in the world. Muguk asks if it's not normal to have some snacks while having a drink. Chunpa slowly raises his hand to his face, saying that he's waited 3 days for him to raise such an absurd condition. He raises his blade out of the ground, telling him to forget it, saying he's going to cut off his head and bring it to the Heavenly Demon Pavilion himself. As he swings his blade, Muguk raises his, deflecting it, generating massive sparks, but it also sends Muguk sliding backward, and his hand starts to ring. Chunpa says that's not bad, and he truly has made good use of his inner energy. And now he understands that it won't be easy to take that head of his. He swings his sword downward, directly towards Muguk. Muguk turns, anticipating it, starting to raise his blade, and blocks it while starting to release his own aura, as it's time for him to lock in. Chunpa begins to smile at the thought of an exciting fight. Muguk realizes that this shit is going to be rough. We see a small shockwave get sent out, immediately followed by a strong aftershock that destroys some of the roof. Just from them colliding, their blades have shattered the ground beneath them as well. It sends Muguk flying backward once more, while Chunpa doesn't look like he's moved at all. Muguk slides, and Chunpa looks down at his blade, and we see his hand shaking as he is also realizing that he's pretty strong. He begins to smile, saying this is interesting, while releasing even more killing intent and his red fiery aura. Muguk looks at this, sweating nervously, and clenches his teeth, saying that he wanted to try using the 4 strides of the wind god to fight him, and he's curious if he would be able to stop the death step. He gauges the situation and realizes that he can't use it yet. There is no time on his side, and there's no reason for him to risk fighting a dangerous fight when he still doesn't have much energy left. He then tells Chunpa that he would really like it if he gave him the demonic army. Chunpa asks who he wants him to put as the demonic army commander, as it can't be him since he's the Nirvana Pavilion Master. He says he wants him to select Jang Ho, the 3rd Corps commander. Chunpa asks if Jang is not on his side, and that getting too greedy will get him killed. Muguk says he's the one who wants to use madness to devour everything, and he's also the one who's suggested they work together. The path which only lunatics walk on can't be anywhere ordinary. Chunpa starts to think about it and looks surprised, asking what the hell he means by lunatics. Muguk asks if he's wrong, saying that he of all people must be crazy in order to want to work together with him. Chunpa looks at him, wondering if he's serious, and Muguk says that he doesn't know the final destination of his ambitions, since he died last time before he was able to show it to the world. Surprisingly, he was the first among the demon supremes to die, and he wonders why someone so savage and scrupulous would be the first. Chunpa starts to look at him, thinking about it, then grits his teeth, calling him a little shit, saying that his greed has foiled this whole negotiation. He kicks his bottle of liquor, and he flies up high into the sky, completely leaving. Muguk looks up, watching him, and smiles, saying that he won't be able to reject his offer because he knows better than anyone else that he has 7 other supremes that he can go and work with. We get a time skip to 2 days later, and we see Jang Ho wondering what the hell happened, as Chunpa recommended him to become the demonic army commander, asking if he was the one behind it. Muguk says that his judgment was right, and that Jang Ho is definitely smart and observant enough for him to come here and ask him that question. So, Muguk is honest, saying yes. Jang Ho says that he is thankful that he thinks so highly of him, but he doesn't deserve that position. Muguk says there is no need to be humble. That was the position of the demonic army commander that died by his own hands. He just needs to lead the demonic army as he did for the 3rd Corps, and if he does that, he will definitely become the best demonic army commander in history. Jang Ho looks super startled and says that he really is overestimating him too much. Muguk says that might be the case, but since there will be other candidates being recommended, he wants to see how it pans out. Jang Ho says bet, and Muguk looks at him, saying that he told him that they'll see how it pans out, but he intends to get busy and make him the demonic army commander. Then it jumps to Muguk sweating nervously, as his father is standing before him in a Hawaiian robe, staring at him. There's not a single word being uttered, and it's just awkward silence between the two of them. Muguk finally speaks up, asking if that's a new robe. His father says that these are his pajamas. Again, awkward silence ensues, and they just stare at each other. His father asks what he's doing here so late at night. Muguk asks what he means, saying it's still early evening, and that it was supposed to be top secret that he slept this early, because if the Murim Alliance leader finds out, they'll target him when he's asleep. His father tells him to get to the point, and Muguk says he intends to use the Blood Heaven Sword Demon as one of his swords. His father sighs, saying that he recently just said he wanted to kill him, asking what changed. Muguk tells him that it would be a waste, and his father makes an expression showing that he is right. Muguk says this is not new information to his father, but when Chunpa recommended Jang Ho, he probably already realized that the Blood Heaven Sword Demon is working with him. His father low-key gives him a gaze as if he is taking on more than he can handle, and he tells him that Chunpa isn't someone he can tame so easily. Muguk says that he doesn't intend to tame him, he just wants to use him until he breaks, and if he isn't valuable enough to keep as part of his collection, then he won't hesitate to discard him. His father asks what he'll do if he slashes him, and Muguk says that he'll let him try. And there is something different between the two of them. He's already old, and if he breaks once, that will be the end of him, but the more Muguk fights, the stronger he'll get, because he's still young. His father says that his words are cheap, asking why he's telling him all this. Muguk says that he's just receiving a salary from him, so it's natural for him to give reports on what he does. His father asks if he's sure he's not here to ask to accept the recommendation of Jang Ho. Muguk says it's the opposite, and he does not want him to agree with his recommendation, no matter what. His father looks curious, asking if he really wants him to reject it. Muguk says yes, and he wants to take this chance to show the Blood Heaven Sword Demon his place. He was acting all high and mighty when he was with him, and others might even think he thinks he's better than his father, so he wants him to know his place. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, his father's expression is hard to read, and he says this is his chance for him to acquire the demonic army, but he just wants to give that up only to put him in his place. Then he says he doesn't want to hear this bullshit, and he wants him to tell him the truth. Muguk says, as expected, his father is really sharp, and he says he's correct. He actually has something to gain from Chinpa, and in order for him to take it, this must not go in his favor. His father asks if it's more important than the demonic army, and Muguk says that in a sense, it is, though he still plans to make the demonic army his and he plans to make everybody his. His father looks impressed. Then he turns, telling him to stop being ridiculous. Muguk gives him a slight smile, telling his father that tonight, there is nothing more ridiculous than the drip he is currently wearing. It then jumps to Chinpa telling Muguk's father that while things might not be going according to his plan, the second young master has been distinguishing himself within the cult lately. He looks at Chinpa, saying that he thought that was his doing, and Chinpa bows, saying not at all, and it's all thanks to him, and he only came to realize his aptitude recently. His father says that he is still immature, and Chinpa says that's what brought him here to say this, and he wants to bring him to even higher heights. His father says if he's willing to help him, it'd truly be a rare opportunity for him, and he may do as he wishes. Chinpa thanks him and then says that since he's giving him permission to help, surely he can give him a good push from the back. His father asks what he means, and Chinpa says for the demonic army commander selection, he wants him to allow the person he selects to be the commander. Muguk's father stares at him and recalls Muguk telling him not to agree with his recommendation no matter what. So he tells him that it'll be hard for him to agree to the request. Chinpa says this is also something that the second young master wants, and his father sighs, saying that as he knows, he's already done much to support his second son, and he needs to consider the feelings of his first. Chinpa says there's something he's learned while raising disciples, and if they're going to support a certain someone, they must choose to go with only that one person, and he has been criticized a lot for failing to do that. Muguk's father tells him that he does not care. Unlike him, who has a generous heart, he'll just kill anyone who dares to say anything bad about him. Chinpa looks annoyed but keeps his cool, and Muguk's father asks if there's anything else. Chinpa says no and that he'll see him again, and he starts to head out. But we see that he's low-key pissed, and he wonders why he's not giving his full support, and if he's already chosen to support him, he should go all the way. That night, he's drinking with Muguk, saying that it seems that cult leader values his older brother more than him. Muguk asks if that's really the case and looks down at him, realizing his father has done his part of the plan. He says that it looks like their joint efforts are not meant to be, and if he's losing to his brother, then he ought to have filled up what he lacked. Chinpa is surprised, asking if this means he's saying that he's not good enough, and Muguk says he's just kind of disappointed. Chinpa grits his teeth but gently puts his cup down, saying that it was impossible to make Jang Ho the demonic army commander to begin with. Muguk asks if he's really already given up, and Chinpa says there's no need to be hung up on something that won't work. Muguk says that he thought he acted high and mighty all this time, yet he can't do one thing for him. Chinpa starts to feel annoyed, asking what he means by just one thing, and acting all high and mighty. Muguk says that he was the one who said that he'd support him and become his backer, and Chinpa tells him that he's the one who pestered him like a child to do something that he can't make happen. Chinpa tries to gauge exactly what he's planning, and Muguk starts to pull out his blade and uses it to draw a line in the ground between them. He says that in the past, he mentioned that this is what the cult leader thinks of him, and he trusted what he said and stayed in line. But this is more like the relationship he has with his father instead, as he draws a line between it, and Chinpa looks down at it, thinking about it. Muguk looks at him, saying that with this, he probably has nothing more he can say to him, and if he were him, He'd make it happen no matter what. Chunpa, still looking down at the line, looks back up toward Muguk, telling him to give it a try then. Muguk asks what he means, and Chunpa says that he mocked him, saying that he's incapable of doing this small feat, so he should be able to do it easily then. Muguk asks what he'll do if his father agrees to his request, and Chunpa says he should just go ahead, and it's going to backfire on him. Muguk says he's certain that his father won't agree, since he rejected him, and he certainly knows his father well, and he asks if he's suggesting a bet. Chunpa grins, saying that he'd love to do that, and if he can't do it, then he'll come over to his side without saying a word, and he'll stop talking about wanting more from him. Muguk asks what'll happen if he accomplishes it, and Chunpa starts to think about it, saying that he'll do whatever he wants. Muguk says that he wants him to get him an elixir if he makes it work, and it has to be one that's better than the demonic essence pill. Chunpa's surprised, asking if he knows how hard it is to find an elixir of that high quality. Muguk says that's why he's suggesting it. Now that they're in the same boat, it would be better for him to get stronger, because it would benefit him too. Chunpa realizes that he's right, and they kind of stare at each other, and Muguk says there's a reason why he asked him to get an elixir. It is a rare one that gives more inner energy than the demonic essence pill, and he knows he has the heavenly divine pill. Chunpa tells him that he won't be able to make it possible, and Muguk says if he does and he can't get him an elixir, then he has no idea why he needs to work with him in the first place. Chunpa starts to think that there's nothing to lose for him here, and decides to agree, saying that if he makes him the demonic army commander, he'll give him exactly what he wants. Muguk then tightens the grip on his blade, unsheathing it, telling him that this is a mutual agreement. Chunpa decides that it's time to go all in, and they tap blades together, signaling that this is a mutual agreement. He then flies off, and Muguk watches, and he says that if he's able to consume the heavenly divine pill on top of the demonic essence one, then he wouldn't lose to any of the demon supremes because of inner energy. He then asks Myung about the probability of Jang Ho becoming the commander. Muguk tells him that he wants to hear what his honest thoughts are, and Myung thinks about it, saying that it's less than 10%. Muguk says that he heard that Chunpa recommended him, and Myung says that the cult leader has already rejected it, as he knows that the cult leader isn't one to change his mind unless there's a very good reason. Muguk says he knows that very well and asks, what if another demon supreme also recommends Jang Ho? Myung starts to think about it, and Muguk asks if surely this would be enough to increase the odds. Muguk has a woman in mind for this too. That night, Myung is still working away, looking at his book but clearly thinking about something else. It's his conversation that he had with Muguk about two demon supremes recommending Jang Ho. He says that has never happened before, but if it really does happen, there is a chance that Jang Ho can become the demonic army commander, as that would give the cult leader justification to change his mind. But Myung doesn't actually know if that can be done. Muguk smiles, saying that he'll give it a try, and there are times when it's easier to deal with two tigers than just one. Myung's thinking about it, saying surely that other tiger is not the Sword Supreme. It then jumps to a member of the Northern Heaven Sword clan, named Bei Jongtak, asking what he means by rape, saying that the servant is framing him and that he wants to confront her. Muguk asks why he thinks she framed him in the first place, and Jongtak asks how he's meant to know, saying maybe someone ordered her to do it, or maybe he offended her in some way, but he has never made any sexual advances. Muguk thinks about it and says that he'll let him meet her, and calls out to Darion. Darion enters the room, and we see the little girl. I hope to God this guy is found innocent. Jongtak asks why she is doing this and yells. Muguk tells him to be quiet, and if he shouts once more, he won't let them talk at all. Muguk asks her if this is the one who raped her, and she nods her head. Jongtak asks how dare she lie and to look at her, she is shaking because she's scared she'll get caught lying. Muguk says that it's only because she's scared. Jongtak asks what he's saying and if he's really taking her side. Muguk says he heard that he told her he'd go to her hometown and kill her family if she exposed him. Jongtak asks if he's seriously believing what she said, and both Muguk and Darion nod. Muguk glances at Darion, and two more women enter the room. Muguk says surely he remembers them, as they all worked as his servants before. Jongtak says he knows them and that they've grown up so much. The women look very scared of him, and Muguk tells Jongtak to stop feigning ignorance. They've already testified that he only hugs and tackles children, and the way he treated them was no different. He'd fool with them for about 2 or 3 years and then change to a new child. This guy needs to be executed immediately. Jongtak says he simply made a mistake after getting drunk and would like to have a second chance. There has never been anyone who's gone to jail because they touched their servant before. Muguk says he seems to have done his research, and that's right. Jongtak tells him that he swears to the heavens that he'll never do it again, and if he wants, he'll write a vow. Muguk says there's no need to go that far, and he won't be going to jail anyway. The girls are all surprised, wondering if he's really going to be set free. Jongtak starts thanking him, saying that one day, he'll pay this back, only for Muguk to swing his blade directly across the dude's throat. In an instant, his head is lobbed off, floating through the air. Muguk says that prison is too nice for a guy like this. I agree. Jongtak's corpse falls backward onto the floor, blood still flying out, and all the women are shocked, even Darion. Muguk tells them that the person who tortured them all is now dead, and their family members won't be threatened anymore. They should live their lives without worries. They probably won't be able to forget what happened to them until the day they die, but if they're going to remember it, they'll remember what happened today too. Let the moment that he paid for his crimes cover it up, and remember to look at his face on the floor. This is the best he can do for them. What a W-mans. The girls are still just stunned, and one of them speaks up, thanking him for letting them take revenge. The other two look worried, and immediately, they all start crying and hugging one another, glad that at least now they have some form of closure to this incident. Muguk looks sad and regretful that this even happened to them in the first place, and so does Darion. Muguk says there's no need to thank him, and he was only able to punish him because all of them were brave enough to testify against him. This is all thanks to them, so they should continue living bravely from now on. They bow, saying yes, sir, and head out as Darion escorts them. Muguk wonders what exactly is happening within the cult, because if they continue to allow these crimes under the guise of only the strong survive, then fate will definitely have his father cut down by the orthodox martial artists. Rather, if this continues, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. That is just karma. Leon then runs in, calling out to Muguk, saying that the person he just executed was a Northern Heaven swordsman, and that the Flower Sword Supreme won't let this go, asking if he's not afraid. Muguk says of course he is, he's afraid he's going to die before he takes care of all this trash. She says that after he became the Nirvana Pavilion Master, their cult has slowly started to become good. At this rate, they'll have more good people than the Murim Alliance. Muguk tells her that this isn't exactly a good deed, it's just how it should be around here. Nobody should be able to commit crimes like this and go unpunished. They just weren't able to do what's expected so far. He then yells, telling Darion to notify the Sword Supreme and tell her there's a problem that occurred in the process of the investigation, so he'll meet with her to explain everything. It jumps to the Northern Heaven Sword Clan, as Muguk is escorted by a man and they head deep into a bamboo forest, where we see some kind of building. Low-key looks like a temple. The man says that the Nirvana Pavilion Master is here, and the door slowly slides open as a woman steps out wearing a blue robe and she welcomes him. We are introduced to the Flower Sword Supreme, named So Young Rang. If you've watched till the end, comment, asteroid, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.